Red Eye Radio Million Mile Club. We've been saluting drivers who have surpassed the million-mile mark with preventable, accident-free driving. By reaching this milestone, you can be a part of an elite club of drivers who share remarkable safety records and demonstrate superior driving skills. If you or someone you know is a truck driver with 1 million miles or more of driving under your belt without a preventable accident, register online at redeyeradioshow.com. That's redeyeradioshow.com. The Red Eye Radio Million Mile Club would not be possible without the generous support of the fine folks from Petro Stopping Centers, Howe's Lubricator, Motel 6, the St. Christopher Fund, and Cat Scale. We applaud the individual truckers and fleets who drive with care and keep our highways safe. The Red Eye Radio Million Mile Club, devoted to trucking safety. Register online at redeyeradioshow.com.
Overdrive, decades-running pride and polished custom truck beauty competition this year ran a little later in the truck show season than usual. The virtual competition was scheduled to put a cap on an in-person show season. Overdrive collected dozens of competitive entries in 7 categories, put them all up for an audience vote, and unveiled the winner in an online presentation this fall that you can access at overdriveonline.com. Navigate to the pride and polish section. Also there, read profiles of each winner as the weeks go by to close out the year. Again, that's overdriveonline.com.
WWTN, Hendersonville, Nashville.
From the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling Studio, Super Talk 99.7.
WTN.
5 o'clock on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories this Wednesday morning. 41 degrees and some fog out there. We need that sun to come up, warm us up. Full forecast and traffic in 5 minutes. Israel at war, continuing coverage. Here's Sherry Preston.
President Biden has landed in Israel, saying of the blast at that hospital in Gaza.
I was deeply saddened and outraged by the explosion at the hospital in Gaza yesterday. And based on what I've seen, it appears as though it was done by the other team.
Witnesses say doctors at that facility have been performing surgery without anesthesia in a desperate bid to save badly wounded victims of the blast that killed possibly hundreds who had been sheltering there. Israel blaming an errant rocket from the group Islamic Jihad for the blast. This is IDF spokesman Yan Hagari.
According to our intelligence, Hamas checked the reports, understood it was an Islamic Jihad rocket that had misfired, and decided to launch a global media campaign to hide what really happened.
The blast upending President Biden's visit to the region, Arab leaders canceling their Jordan summit with him.
Tennessee U.S. Senator Marsha Blackburn has filed legislation that strips U.S. funding from a group that is supposed to help Palestinian people, not Hamas. But she says that money's going to Hamas anyway. This year, the U.S. gave $153.7 million to the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees. Blackburn says that group employs Hamas members. Right now in Nashville, Metro Council's voted to accept $3 million in state money to help pay for SROs in every school. But some members, like District 30 Council member Sandra Sepulveda, they want more gun control instead of officers.
I see this more as the state trying to wash its hands of its responsibility to pass adequate gun reform legislation, and I don't want to be a part of that.
I say let's take the state money to pay for this thing. It only makes sense.
Now, Metro Council voted to take the state money, 23-12, but the police department says it will go to pay the current officers they have. In high schools and middle schools in Nashville, there still will be no full-time SROs in any Nashville elementary school. Market Numbers Report brought to you by Beacon Capital Management. Online at beaconcm.com. Here's Daria Albinger.
Stocks drifted on the latest news that the economy remains solid, maybe a little too much for the Fed. The Dow rose 13 points, the Nasdaq fell 34, and the S&P gave up a fraction. The financial markets have been shaky in recent weeks due to worries about the war in the Middle East and its potential impacts on oil prices. But here in the U.S., concern for that is on the back burner as investors focus on what usually drives the stock market's long-term interest rates, the economy, and corporate profits. We shopped more last month than analysts expected. The Commerce Department says retail sales rose a solid 0.7% in September. That's the sign of a healthy economy, but it can also fuel inflation, and that could prompt the Federal Reserve to keep interest rates high. The IRS is planning to invite a select group of taxpayers across 13 states to try out the agency's new free file system beginning this January.
Checking futures ahead of the opening bell on Wall Street. Dow futures down 74, S&P down 15, NASDAQ down 71. That's the latest news. Traffic and weather next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Nashville's Morning News with Dan Mandis.
And go, my fellow Americans.
We talk news. Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
.506. You know, I thought I had enough time. Ken, Johnny, I thought I had enough time. I don't know how long the music was playing.
About 3 minutes.
No, it wasn't. Be nice.
I'm just joking, buddy. I'm just joshing you, brother Dan. Man,
I thought I had more time, but at least I was able to get my coffee.
That's right. And might I say, that is a mighty fine pot of coffee you made there.
Listen, I wanted to make sure, because again, I've been on the air all night, so I wanted to make sure that I had my coffee so that I would not sound like Joe Biden.
It seems to me that have to continue to ensure that you have what you need to defend yourselves. And we're going to make sure that occurs, as you know.
Uh-huh.
And we have to also bear in mind that Hamas does not represent all the Palestinian people. And it has brought them only suffering. You know, years ago, I asked the Secretary of State when he and I were working in the Senate to write something for him. And
do you think at this point, and by the way, for you folks that haven't been listening, this is Joe Biden arriving in Tel Aviv as the Middle East is literally burning down. You've got massive protests going on all across the Middle East, all across the region, because, again, if you haven't been listening to Red Eye Radio all night, I will tell you what's going on. This bomb, this missile, this rocket took out this hospital in Gaza. And so for the better part of the entire, evening and last night, you had basically the entire world pointing their fingers at Israel, saying that Israel had taken out this hospital in Gaza that killed 500 plus people. But then Israel is saying, no, it's not us. That rocket came from inside Gaza. And it turns out it's this little group, this organization called Islamic Jihad, and they are sort of like this little offshoot of Hamas. And so everybody's trying to look at all the evidence of, who fired this rocket that killed all the people. Iran is now saying time is run out. And they're getting ready to fire rockets at Israel as Joe Biden is there and right next to Bibi Netanyahu. And so with all of this going on, all of this mass hysteria going on, the Middle East is literally blowing up. You've got protests in all of these various cities. Joe Biden arrives and he is Sleepy Joe personified.
He said, he wrote a line that I think is appropriate. He said, it's not, we lead, not just, well, I won't go into it. I'll wait later. Taking too much time. But the point is this, that I was deeply saddened and outraged by the explosion at the hospital in Gaza yesterday. And based on what I've seen, it appears as though it was done by the other team, not you. But there's a lot of people out there not sure. So we've got to overcome a lot of things. And it also means encouraging life-saving capacity to help the Palestinians who are innocent, caught in the middle of this. And well, at any rate, that's who we are. Not just me, but that's who the United States is. And it's just not the example of our power, it's the power of our example. It's almost as important. The world's looking. Israel has a value set like the United States does and other democracies. And they're looking to see what we're going to do. So, Mr. Prime Minister, I'm very happy to be back in Israel with you. Thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to having a thorough discussion about where everybody goes from here. But thank you, and I want to say to the people of Israel, their courage, their commitment, their bravery is stunning. It's really stunning. I'm proud to be here. Thank you.
And there you go.
What in the world is going on?
I don't know. I don't know if Joe Biden is actually trying to match Johnny B's outstanding impression.
Let me tell you something.
Of Sleepy Joe.
He's nailing Johnny B. He is nailing Johnny B's version of him.
Yes. He is. That's embarrassing. Didn't I say earlier this weekend that I was afraid of Biden going to the Middle East and stepping foot into Israel in the middle of all of this because I was afraid that he was going to embarrass us on the world stage?
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
That was a show of force there, of power.
I'm sure that Iran is just shaking in their boots. Now, a few things to, get a substantive here. First of all, when he sort of went off script and he was talking about working with the Secretary of State to draw up a paper, whatever that was.
Yeah. Was he talking about 1975?
I don't know, but you know what happened there is he completely got lost.
Yes.
Like he didn't remember what the end of the story was. So that's number one. Number two, one of the things that we all said, and even Antony Blinken and others have said about what's going on in Israel, is that we need to give them the ability to just do what they need to do to take out Hamas. Because we all know what happened weekend before last. It was absolute carnage. You listen to the message that 2 minutes and 12 seconds or so. It felt like 20 minutes. But you listen to the overall message from Biden, and what is he saying? What Joe Biden is saying is basically, yes, the world is watching, and that's what he said. And he also said that, there's a lot of people in Palestine, Biden says, in Gaza, that don't support Hamas. That's debatable, I would say, but whatever. And he's basically teeing it up so that Benjamin Netanyahu will not send those ground forces into Israel, because he said there's a whole bunch of people that are innocent in Gaza who had nothing to do with the terror attack. The world is watching, and basically it seems to me like the message was, Benjamin Netanyahu, the world is watching. You cannot do what you want to do. To me, that's what it sounded like. And the Biden administration, Antony Blinken, and leaders across the world have all said the same thing, which is the best thing that the United States can do is stay out of it. If Israel needs to take out Hamas, and unfortunately there's going to be some other people that are, caught in the crossfire because Hamas won't, let them evacuate and so forth, well then, you know what? War is hell. But we are in a war. Israel is in a war. They certainly are. And so that's it. At least it seems to me. I don't know, Johnny or Ken, if you're reading that the same way, but that's what it seems to me that Joe Biden is teeing him up to do, which is hold back on the ground assault while, they figure out the right way to do it. I mean, that's my impression or interpretation of what, Sleepy Joe said. What do you guys think? Is that about what you got, Ken?
I think he's he's trying to walk that. What word am I looking for? He's trying to walk the fine line without going full on Israel or full on Hamas.
I'm sorry, but what happened to we support Israel? Full stop.
Yeah, now it's we support Israel, but.
Yeah, 5:15. Time to check the roads from the Paul Winkler Investment WTN Traffic Center. .516 on Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7. As far as your weather today, looks like it's going to be mostly sunny and a high of 72. Right now, 41 degrees at Super Talk 99.7 at WTN. Welcome on in. By the way, it is October 18th, Wednesday, on Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 at WTN. By the way, one of my all-time favorite guests coming up at 6:35, that is going to be Dakota Wood from the Heritage Foundation. And we'll talk about what is going on all across the Middle East this morning. And Joe Biden, as he arrives in Tel Aviv, I think it was about an hour and a half ago. So there's a lot of news that is breaking. I do want to also draw your attention to, because I do realize, that was an awfully long journey, actually, Ken, as we were listening to the president and that long 2-minute, 15-second little speech that he gave. And it's a long journey from like where he starts to where he ends up. It's almost like he had 30 seconds of energy.
Yes.
And then he just started to unwind. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's like whatever thing that they put into his body to, allow him to have some energy for a short spurt period of time. It is almost like you could just see that it evaporated. It left his body in the middle of that little 2.5-minute speech.
Well, when he started going off script to talk about the Secretary of State, as he put it, wrote him a note.
When he was in the Senate.
When he was in the Senate.
Yeah, which Secretary of State is he talking about?
And when? Was this the 1960s Joe Biden, 70s or 80s or 90s Joe Biden?
That's exactly right. Now, I want to draw your attention to, because again, it was a long journey, this one soundbite.
I was deeply saddened and outraged by the explosion at the hospital in Gaza yesterday. And based on what I've seen, it appears as though it was done by the other team, not you. But there's a lot of people out there not sure. So we got to overcome a lot of things.
You know, it's interesting because I hear that, and it sounds like what he's saying is, trust but verify. I mean, to me, if I'm Benjamin Netanyahu, I'm going to put it this way. If I'm Benjamin Netanyahu and Joe Biden says that, to me, the implication of what he just said is, yes, trust but verify, which I guess is fine, but he didn't have to say it in front of all the cameras because there's going to be leaders out there that are saying, well, it's clear that Joe Biden doesn't necessarily trust when Benjamin Netanyahu says that we had nothing to do with it. And by the way, at the time that Biden said this, there is ample evidence that this was not Israel. And I'll play you that evidence coming up in the 6 o'clock hour. But just to tell you where we're going, there is an intercepted phone call between a couple of bad guys out there in Gaza. And that intercepted phone call, it's you can find it on my Twitter feed, at Dan Mandis Show, where I posted it. And it's a couple of guys having an oh crap moment because they are the bad guys, the other side, as Joe says. I'll call them the bad guys. And their oh crap moment is, this rocket went way off course and it hit the hospital. They fired the rocket. They wanted to hit Israel. They fired it from the cemetery behind the hospital, and they had an oops moment, a want to get away moment, and that thing spiraled right into the hospital, exploded the hospital. Hospital blows up, and 500 people are dead. And they talk about it. That's number one. Number two, they've got video as well. And when you look at the video and the trajectory of all of these rockets, they are coming from Gaza, shooting towards Israel. And yes, one of them seems to me spirals out of control and hits the hospital. I mean, so Israel has all kinds of evidence, but here's the thing, is that Israel could provide a mountain of evidence. Do you think that the leaders of Jordan or the leaders of Iran and some of these other nations, do you really think that they're going to believe anything that Israel brings to the table? Of course not. So it's almost a moot point. If you're Benjamin Netanyahu, I mean, you've got to prove it to the rest of the world. You've got to prove it to, Joe Biden. But all of these other foreign leaders, they will, regardless of the evidence, they will say that this was Israel that did it, and they will never accept what I would say is the fact, and that is that this rocket actually came from this offshoot of Hamas, and it came from inside Gaza and hitting that hospital, which most certainly changes the narrative. It is 5:21 on Nashville's Morning News. By the way, the super text line is going to be open momentarily, 615-737-9986. Dan Mandis here for the Wellness Institute of Nashville. Listen, if you are sick of losing quality of life because of chronic back, neck, or knee pain, call my friends at the Wellness Institute of Nashville. They can help you today and do it at a reasonable price. And right now, they're offering half off spinal decompression therapy for your chronic pain. Now, not only are they offering you half off, but your first appointment is just $23. And that does include your first exam, consultation, x-rays, and that first treatment as well. So call them today at 615-246-5009, 615-246-5009, and take advantage of the Wellness Institute of Nashville's half-off spinal decompression therapy for your chronic back, neck, or knee pain. And that first appointment, just $23. 615-246-5009, the Wellness Institute of Nashville, painisbad.com.
Hey folks, I'm Paul Winkler. One of the things I've been hearing a lot from people lately is the concern about the dollar crashing. And you'll see this out there on the internet all over the place, articles written about it. And the idea is that the Russian and Chinese, those countries are looking at getting together and creating their own currency that will compete against the US dollar as a reserve currency. Now, for many, many decades, there have been other currencies that have been trying to vie for that status. And there's a possibility that you're going to have some that are going to encroach on that a little bit. But is it that big of a thing to worry about? Well, number one, last year, the Chinese currency made up very little of any kind of world trade, number one. But what is it that's really going on underneath the surface? A lot of it is trying to sell you newsletters and investments that you probably ought to stay away from. For example, one of the things I see is, well, you ought to buy gold because the dollar's going to crash. And you see all of these commercials out there, and I say, well, wait a minute, wait. They're trying to get you to buy gold with your what? They're looking to take your dollars. If they really believe what they're saying, why would they take your dollars for their gold? Number one. Number two, how do you protect yourself against these valuation changes in various currencies? Well, let me explain it this way. Let's say that you had a currency called the clam. Okay, and you had a country that had one clam and you could exchange it for $1 at any one point in time. Let's say that that's the case. And you had a widget that was sold by this country and you could buy that widget in that country for one clam. So you take your $1, you exchange it for a clam, and then you got your widget. Now, what if the dollar weakens? Well, what happens now, this clam is the same, right? Nothing different here. It's the same deal. But instead of $1, now it takes $2 to get the clam. Now, what happened? Your widget just doubled in price from your perspective as an American. Well, how do we use this to our advantage? As an investor, we want to make sure that we don't just myopically only focus on U.S. stocks. And that's a big mistake investors made from 2000 through 2010 and other periods in history, in the 1970s, the late 1980s, and so on and so forth. What we want to do is we want to make sure that we have good international diversification, because if the dollar weakens, then those international investments go up in value. So it's very, very important to know how globally diversified you really are as an investor. You want to learn more? Call us up for a free 15-minute consultation at paulwinkler.com, and we'll walk you through what we do and see if we can be of help to you, the investor out there that is so often being sold things that they really don't need to be buying.
President Biden is in Israel. Hear what he and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had to say. Metro Council members come to a decision on school security in Nashville, hitting the snooze button. You may want to think twice after learning the results of two studies. These stories and more at 5:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
5:28 on Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7. I love what, I don't know if, who is this? Rick in Dayton. Rick from Dayton. I wonder, Rick, you've got it if you're listening. Did you invent this word? Ken, you ready? Johnny, you ready for this word that Rick in Dayton has sent to me? His word for the day, Hamas holes. That's Hamas holes.
Better be careful there, Brother Dan Mandis.
Not. There's a story coming up during the Gang of Three Amigos. I've been waiting all morning to share this story with you two coming up. It is a funny story. And it shows the lunacy of where America is at right now. So I'm going to, folks, you've got to stay close and listen to this story because I've read a lot of weird stuff in my day. And I think that we all know that, our world is literally crumbling around us. This story is proof that there is a certain segment of our population that is just absolutely insane. And it's coming up next. I bet you they're Biden voters. Anyway, details straight ahead on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
$5:30 on the dot this Wednesday morning. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Starting out chilly. 40 degrees right now on Music Row. Full forecast and traffic in 5 minutes. Continuing coverage, Israel-Hamas war. Under additional security protection, President Biden is in Israel, and he spoke to reporters alongside Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
I was deeply saddened and outraged by the explosion at the hospital in Gaza yesterday. And based on what I've seen, it appears as though it was done by the other team, not you.
Prime Minister Netanyahu.
You've rightly drawn a clear line between the forces of civilization and the forces of barbarism. You describe what Hamas did as sheer evil. It is exactly that.
Arab leaders canceling their Jordan summit with President Biden following yesterday's deadly hospital blast in Gaza. Hamas blaming an Israeli airstrike. Israel saying it has proof a failed rocket launch by other militants in Gaza caused that explosion. Right now in Nashville, $3 million in state money for school resource officers has been approved by the Metro Council. But some members don't want money. This is at-large member Delicia Porterfield, who wants more gun control.
We asked for gun reform, plain and simple. We asked for it. We demanded it. We marched. We protested. We cried. And we got money for police officers in schools.
The vote was 23-12 with 2 abstentions, but the money only goes to pay for the officers in Metro high schools and middle schools. There will still be no SROs in Nashville elementary schools because Chief John Drake says he doesn't have enough staff. Over to some medical news. Daria Albinger has results of 2 studies on what a couple of extra minutes to snooze is doing to you.
Hitting the snooze button? You may want to think twice after learning the results of 2 studies. They found regular snoozers may not feel any less drowsy and that they may not sleep as deeply as they could if they didn't hit the button so often. Snoozing didn't affect mood, nor did it appear to lead to cognitive impairment. But the study's authors say more research is needed there. Those who snooze tend to be evening types, and they get an average of 13 minutes less sleep than those who never snooze.
Well, that's not me. I get an average of 3 or 4 hours less sleep.
So
every
day.
I
guess that means that the phrase "you snooze, you lose" actually is true.
Brother Dan Mandis, I think you have nailed it again.
I've had 3 Red Bulls.
I'm getting ready to have me another cup of coffee.
All right.
That's the latest news, traffic and weather next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
538 Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Good morning to you, friends. Time for the Gang of Three Amigos featuring Johnny B. Good morning, Johnny.
Good morning, Dan and Ken.
Good morning, Ken.
Good morning, boys. Yeah.
So I didn't quite get. So in other words, you're not supposed to hit the snooze button because if you do hit the snooze button, then you're not getting...
Yeah, you're not getting any meaningful sleep anyway.
Like... After you hit the snooze button?
After you hit the snooze button, yeah. Or even before you hit the snooze button. Apparently it screws you up all day long.
Oh, I don't buy that. Do you really buy that? Like, I don't buy that.
I would if they'd pay me to do the study.
Fake news.
If they'd pay me to do the study, I'd say, oh, yeah, you don't want to do that.
How many times do you snooze, like in the morning? Johnny, let's go around the room. So I have actually, if you look at my phone, I have like 5 or 6 alarms, and it starts at like 1 o'clock. Well, no, it starts at like 12:45.
Yeah.
12:55, 1:05, 1:15, 1:30.
Wow.
And and there are days when I use them all. And the one for 1:30, the label on that alarm is in capital letters, "Get up now."
Why don't you just sleep until 1:30?
You know what? My wife asked me the same damn thing.
I mean, you might as well just go to 1:30.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then I'd have to set it for 1:30, 1:45, 2 o'clock, right?
Yeah, this study says snoozing did not affect mood, nor did it appear to lead to cognitive impairment. But the study's authors say more research is needed there. Just give us a couple of $1 million and we'll do it.
There you go. By the way, Joseph says that's truth on the snooze button. Quit being a sissy and grow up.
Wow.
I only hit the snooze. Actually, I don't hit the snooze. My wife is the snooze. Jennifer, she will wake up and she'll wake me up.
She'll kick
real
you out
soon.
of bed?
Yes.
Yeah. By the way, you haven't lived until you've been like sleeping next to my wife, and it's a Saturday morning.
Yeah.
And the alarm starts going off on my phone at like 1 o'clock in the morning. Oh, that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's a bad deal right there.
Yeah.
Big bad deal.
How about you, Johnny? You a snoozer?
No, I am not. I get right up.
So you get right up?
Yeah.
That's way to go, brother Johnny B.
What you got to do?
You guys ever read these super texts, and you wonder in what context some of these text messages were sent? Like, for example, Larry texted in, I guess, about something else. And on October 17th, which was yesterday, at 2:48, so during the Matt Murphy show, he texted in, if Mandis gets shorter, with a whole bunch of, laughy face emojis. I'm dying to know, what was that context?
Who knows,
Yeah.
man?
If Mandis gets shorter. I don't know. Now, if I hit the snooze button over and over again, does that mean I get shorter? No. No?
Well, that's what they're saying. The study authors say we need more research. We need more. We don't need. Well, yeah, we do need more money.
Of course.
To make sure it's not hurting people.
Hey, by the way, apparently it was Chris Hand who has coined the phrase Hamas holes.
It was Brother Chris Hand.
Yeah.
Boy, he's just coming up with all kinds of words.
I'll tell you what, man.
Yes,
I got to
he is.
tell you, I'm well done, Chris. Why didn't I come up with that, number one? And number two, did I sleep right through him making up that term, Hamas holes?
Well, I
Apparently
don't know.
I did.
Yesterday, he came up with it between the 9 and noon hour.
Oh, he
I believe
did?
It was, yes.
No, you know what I bet you, though, gentlemen?
What's that, Brother Dan?
I bet you that I inspired him.
Oh, yeah, you did.
Because he called me an a-hole as I was on my way out the door. Okay.
All right,
so
man.
have you guys heard of bone smashing?
Bone smashing. You talking about AC/DC music?
No. Johnny, you ever heard of bone smashing?
I've never heard of bone smashing.
Bone smashing.
You know what people are doing now?
Bone smashing on
People
TikTok.
are taking a hammer and hitting their face with the hammer.
Oh, my God.
With the hopes that as they heal, they become better looking.
This cannot be real.
This is from the New York Post.
It is real.
viral bone-smashing trend is so horrifying it could ruin your face.
Oh. Stupidity has walked
Bone
through the door.
smashing is the practice of repeatedly hitting one's bones, typically the cheekbones or the jaw bones, with a hard object like a hammer.
Natural selection.
To try to get like a high cheekbones and a jawline. That's what they're trying to do.
The hope is that the bone structure will heal in a more attractive shape.
Goodness gracious.
Oh, man.
What is wrong with people? Like every day, I wonder if I have covered the extent of people's stupidity.
No.
And every day there's something else.
We have not seen it.
No. It would take too long.
Morons.
Yes.
Here's the thing. These initial videos that went out are probably not really doing that, but they will lead to people out there actually doing this, especially young teenagers.
So you think this is like, some hipster hacker type people?
Yeah, just to get people, just to see what stupid things people will do.
Oh, it's like a hold my beer moment for these folks. And I think you're right. I forget. It's like the deep dark web people, and they sit around and they think, what can we start? What kind of a trend can we start?
Yeah.
And that's what they do.
It's probably the Chinese that are coming up with all the, let's make a wacky Americans do this next.
It's exactly right. And here we are, hitting ourselves with hammers. See, that's what I want to do, but it's when I hear Joe Biden speak. It's when I hit the hammer.
Ba-doom, ba.
That's what I do to my ba-da-ba.
Ba-da-ba.
All right, moving on.
Yeah, man.
So
watch what your kids are doing on
a public
this
service
stuff,
announcement
man.
from Nashville's Morning News. Don't hit your head with a hammer.
No. Don't hit.
The outcome is never good.
Here's the thing. Look at these people in these videos. Some of them don't even need bone smashing, if you will. I mean, the ones I'm looking at, these people are good-looking people without hitting themselves in the face with a hammer.
And then what happens if you don't heal appropriately and you end up uglier than you were before?
Well, that's what's going to happen, or you're going to be dead.
Can you imagine hitting yourself with a hammer to death?
No.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, somebody will do it.
You go up to, like, heaven, and some other, like, angel says, well, how'd you die? Hitting myself in the head with a hammer? You know what I mean?
Because I'm brilliant.
Yeah.
Now, if you hit yourself to death with a hammer, would that be considered like suicide? Because imagine if you're aiming for your cheekbone, but you're so dumb that you miss and you hit yourself in the temple and you kill yourself. Is that considered suicide?
Who knows?
Yeah.
Yes or no?
All I know is that botched star Dr. Paul Nassif warns against viral bone smashing trend. He says, don't do it.
Yes or no?
No study needed.
I'm gonna mention foods, and I want you guys to say yes or no. Do they need to be refrigerated or not?
All right.
What foods? Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Tortillas. Do tortillas need to be refrigerated? Yes or no?
No.
No.
Okay. Yes.
Oh, BS.
Pie.
Who says that? Dr. Nassif?
Pie. Does pie need to be refrigerated? Yes or no?
Yes.
Sometimes.
All right. Yes. Pie needs to be refrigerated.
BS.
Syrup.
No.
No.
Yes.
BS.
Man.
Citrus fruit.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
BS.
Corn.
No.
No.
Yes.
Oh.
BS.
Peanut butter.
No.
No.
Yes.
Yeah.
Eggs.
Yes.
Yes.
There you go. You guys finally got one right. Ketchup.
No.
Johnny?
Yes.
Yes.
BS.
Now, whole wheat flour. I don't even know what whole wheat flour is.
Wheat flour.
Yes, it needs to be. And butter obviously needs to be
Yes.
refrigerated.
Yes.
I leave my butter out all the time. My butter's sitting on my counter right now, and it's just as soft as it can be.
So the New York Post did this entire
Well, there you go.
this
It's from
entire
New York.
thing. Well, no, it's a legit article.
They don't know anything about pecani sauce. Either.
10 foods that need to be refrigerated, but not everybody does.
What else, Brother Dan?
It's going to be a long day.
Yeah, it is.
Well, no, not everybody knows to refrigerate those foods. So I'm telling people that are listening to the radio program that if you have peanut butter or tortillas or syrup and they're sitting in your cabinet, you need to get a bigger refrigerator. That's all I'm saying. And you know what's funny about that? I know exactly where you can get one.
Just ask Joe Biden.
DT McCall's.
Hey, look at that.
Yes,
wow.
Sir.
Friends,
That's what you call a segu.
If you need a lawnmower, furniture, or a refrigerator, the first stop you need to make, my friends at DT McCall's, either online or in person, just go to their website at dtmccalls.com and check out their incredible selection of everything. And by the way, if you buy something online, like I did, I bought an oven, they're going to deliver it for free and haul away the old stuff. Now at DT McCall's, the price on the tag is the price. They don't try and sneak in additional charges. Now, that is what I call Middle Tennessee values. They've been here in the volunteer state for nearly 100 years, treating people right and doing what's right, offering great products at fair prices. Check them out. 5 locations across Middle Tennessee. Always tell them Dan Mandis told you to stop by if you would. Carthage, Cookeville, Lebanon, Lafayette, and Franklin, always online, dtmccalls.com.
Israel-Hamas war. President Biden is in Israel. We've got a full report. Nashville city leaders have voted on a school safety measure, and a new report shows how much money Americans are spending lately. These stories and more at 6 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
You know, one of the stories that I wanted to do for the Gang of Three Amigos, but we ran out of time. By the way, Ken, you're not the only one calling BS on all those supposed to be refrigerated items.
I knew it.
Super Texter's also saying BS. You know what? I'm siding with the New York Post. And by the way, almost all of those things are sitting in my cabinet,
Brother
with the
Dan,
exception of the eggs.
The only thing you need to correct is how long you wait to cook fresh fish.
Yes.
That's the only thing you need to...
Well, you know what my policy is now, right? Like, I
don't buy it.
The day that I buy it is the day that I cook it.
There you go.
Exactly.
Johnny, you back me up on this because you had the same thing happen to you.
Yeah.
Now, I was first and then you were second. So you should have learned from my stupidity about, how long fish is fresh.
But at least I know to put the Reese's peanut butter cup in the fridge.
Yeah, you do that too.
Yeah.
You do that just because it's good.
Yeah.
Well, I actually have. My daughter, when she was out, she gave me a Reese's peanut butter cup. They used to be our thing, right? Almost brought me to tears. So we go out.
Yeah.
And when she was younger, we would split a Reese's peanut butter cup. She would get one and I would get one.
Yeah.
So we go out. Now, I haven't thought about this in years.
Mm-hmm.
She goes into the store, comes back out. She gets something, comes back out. And what did she have but a Reese's peanut butter cup for she and I to share?
Oh,
that's
I
sweet.
know.
Isn't that nice?
Almost brought me to tears.
Well, you know what I'm doing for my family? I have taken Glenna's treats that she made me and my family, and I've hidden them in the bottom of my refrigerator.
Really?
Yeah, I'm going to keep them for myself.
There you go.
I put a bunch of vegetables on top of them.
Well, see, that's better than me because I just eat them on the way
I'm going to eat every
home.
one of them all by myself.
Well, what are the treats? Like, which ones?
Oh, they look like little peanut butter chocolate treats.
Little Rice Krispie treats. I've got some here for you.
Oh, you do? You have some for me too, Johnny?
Yes.
Okay, very good.
And maybe after the show, he'll get them to you.
Well, you know what the great thing is? Here's the best part about that whole thing. I'm not going home today. I'm going to the hotel across the street because I haven't slept in like 48 hours.
Oh, wow.
And so I've got like 50 melatonin, and I'm going to go, speaking of snoozing, I'm going to go across the street to the hotel, and I'm just going to down all that melatonin, and I'll see you guys, like in another 48 hours.
Better get you a corner room.
I tell you.
Those ladies get busy.
I don't understand. Am I supposed to understand what that means?
Yeah, there's just...
No, seriously, am I supposed to understand what that
means? A lot of knocking going around on these hotels on Music Row.
Okay.
John? Is that you?
I'm your 4 o'clock.
Oh, is that what you're talking? Oh, my goodness gracious. Kid Weaver.
Dan, maybe we'll get you those treats at the end of the show.
Anyway, so I'm going to have all those treats to myself. That'll be like my lunch and dinner, Johnny. Thank you for that. I got to go. 5:57, Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
6 o'clock on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Got the full forecast and traffic in 5 minutes. Right now, continuing coverage, Israel at war.
President Biden arriving in Israel amid rising tensions in the war with Hamas and that blast at a hospital in Gaza. Sitting down with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the president said,
I was deeply saddened and outraged by the explosion at the hospital in Gaza yesterday. And based on what I've seen, it appears as though it was done by the other team, not you. But there's a lot of people out there not sure. So we've got to overcome a lot of things.
The Israeli military insisting the blast was caused by a failed rocket launched by another militant group, Islamic Jihad. ABC's Mary Alice Parks reports from the White House.
The White House says that the president is going to try to personally impress upon Netanyahu how important it is to get humanitarian aid into Gaza and get innocent people out. But there are no guarantees. Politically, it is a major risk.
President Biden's meetings in Jordan with Arab leaders have been canceled during this trip.
As Sherry Preston reporting, and by the way, those Arab leaders are the ones who canceled. Tennessee U.S. Senator Marsha Blackburn filed legislation stripping U.S. funding from a group that's supposed to help Palestinian people, but instead that money's being stolen by Hamas. She says this year the U.S. gave $153.7 million to the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees. Blackburn says that group employs Hamas members. Right now in Nashville, Metro Council's voted to accept $3 million in state money to help pay for school resource officers in every school. But some members, including District 30 Council member Sandra Sepulveda, argued more gun control is needed, not police officers.
I want this to be a clear message from me that it's time for us to look at other ways of helping our children in schools.
Well, the Metro Police Department says this money goes to pay the current officers they have in high schools and middle schools. There still will be no full-time SROs in any Nashville elementary school. Market Numbers Report brought to you by Beacon Capital Management, beaconcm.com. Here's Jim Ryan.
A lackluster day on the trading floor left the Dow Jones 13 points higher and a fraction below 34,000 on Tuesday. The Nasdaq Composite surrendered 0.25%. The S&P was essentially unchanged. United Airlines missed expectations for adjusted earnings in the current quarter, coming in between $1.50 and $1.80 a share. The carrier says the fourth quarter doesn't hold much promise, with the rise in fuel prices and the suspension of service to Tel Aviv. Despite higher prices and higher interest rates, Americans stepped up their spending in September. Retail sales were up 0.7%, according to the Commerce Department. That's more than twice expectations. The increase was driven by spending online and at restaurants. T-Mobile is sending notices to some subscribers on older plans, letting them know that they're being moved automatically to more expensive packages unless they opt out. The switch would add up to about $5 a month.
All right, let's check futures ahead of the opening bell, shall we? Dow futures are down 125. S&P futures down 21. NASDAQ down 90. That's the latest news. Traffic and weather next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Nashville's morning news with Dan Mandis.
And go, my fellow Americans.
We talk news. Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
6:07, Nashville's morning news on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Well, friends, if you're just tuning in, just getting into the car, boy, have you missed a lot. There is a lot going on. Welcome on into Nashville's morning news for your Wednesday, October 18th. And we have a lot to tell you about. Johnny B here as well. Ken Weaver. Dakota Wood is going to be joining us at 6:35 for all the latest on Israel and what is going on with Iran. There was a hospital that had an explosion last night. Going to tell you about this. I know that a lot of you folks that have been listening since 5 o'clock, you've heard all of this, but unfortunately for well, it's a good thing, but people are always tuning in as the morning progresses, and so we have to kind of restart sometimes when there is a major story, and we do have a major story today. So last night, just to catch folks up, there was a hospital that basically exploded in Gaza. And this was a hospital that was full. I mean, as you can imagine, there's a lot of people in these hospitals as Gaza has a lot of things going on and people need a lot of care because of the battle that's been going on. And so this hospital exploded and a rocket hit the hospital, killed 500 people, leveled the hospital. And so now the question is, where did that rocket come from that took out that hospital? And so last night and overnight, you had all of these media outlets that were basically pointing the finger at Israel. They said that Israel clearly took out this hospital, targeted this hospital, wanted to target innocent civilians. And so you had folks in the mainstream media and so forth, and they were blaming Israel. And Israel was like, no. This didn't come from us. These rockets came from inside Gaza. And lo and behold, a couple of things happened. Number one is you had a video that showed that these rockets were being launched from inside Gaza, and one of these rockets kind of spiraled out of control, and one of the pieces landed on the hospital, exploded the hospital. The whole thing just blew up, and down it goes, and hundreds of people killed. And it's a horrible situation because obviously a lot of those folks are innocent. So Israel, number one, had this video. Number two, they intercepted a phone call. And the phone call was two guys, and they were clearly Hamas members. And they're talking about how it was like an oh crap, oops moment, like a want to get away moment. Because this phone call they're talking about, and you can see the video of the audio of the phone call. It's on the Dan Mandis Show Facebook page and also on my Twitter feed at Dan Mandis Show. Two guys talking about how, well, these rockets, they don't usually fail like this. It hit the hospital? Yeah. It's in Arabic, so it's I can't play the audio. But they're going back and forth. And one guy is explaining to the other guy that the rocket that was launched by an outfit, Islamic Jihad, a little group that is affiliated with Hamas. So in other words, they took out their own hospital, and they were trying to blame Israel. And Israel has plenty of proof that it was not them. So that's only part of the story. But when this hospital goes down, and when we saw all of these protests that have been happening all across the Middle East, consulates are being burned, consulates are being broken into. I mean, you got thousands of people that are out there protesting because Israel, they believe, took down this hospital and killed 500 people. It wasn't even Israel. And so now my question is, okay, so it wasn't Israel. The proof is out there between the video and the phone call. Israel is also saying that, you look at the radar and some of the other evidence that they have, and it's clearly not them. But you've got all of these protests, thousands of people protesting across the Middle East because of this hospital. And now my question is, okay, so you knuckleheads in like Iran and Jordan and some of these places. You burned the British consulate. You burned the American consulate. You did all of these horrific things. How are we going to get our consulate back? Because you burned it to the ground because you thought that Israel did this when it wasn't Israel at all. It was your own people. We can't get our consulate back. So this has been a big story all night. Joe Biden, of course, also part of the news cycle today is that Iran, they were saying time's up. So as our president was flying to Tel Aviv, as our president was flying to Israel, you actually had Iran saying time is up, and they were threatening to bomb Israel as Joe Biden, this was going on in the wee hours of the morning, Joe Biden is arriving in Tel Aviv. And so with so much fanfare, Joe Biden sits down next to Benjamin Netanyahu, and this is what Joe Biden said, 2 minutes and 15 seconds of pure Biden.
It seems to me that have to continue to ensure that you have what you need to defend yourselves. And we're going to make sure that occurs, as you know. And we have to also bear in mind that Hamas does not represent all the Palestinian people. And it has brought them only suffering.
Listen to this, because Biden gets completely lost.
Years ago, I asked the Secretary of State when he and I were working in the Senate to write something for him, and he said, he wrote a line that I think is appropriate. He said, it's not, we lead, not just, well, I won't go into it. I'll wait later.
Yeah, see, he's completely lost. He started a story. This is classic Joe. He's completely lost. He starts a story and he forgets what the hell he's saying.
Taking too much time, but the point is this, that I was deeply saddened and outraged by the...
Back to script. You see where he picks it up? He picks it right back up to the script. Oh, I've got more. I've got a lot more, because there was a couple of things that Biden said that has really triggered, because I played this audio in the 5 o'clock hour, that has really triggered not only a whole bunch of super texters, but has actually made news. I'm going to play that audio for you coming up next and explain its context as well. 6:15, time to check the roads from the Paul Winkler Investment WTN Traffic Center. Mostly sunny today, a high of 72, and right now 41 degrees at Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Going through some of the relevant audio, well, none of it's really relevant, but some of this audio from Joe Biden as he arrives in Tel Aviv. And I explained to you the backdrop of the bombed hospital and how Israel was blamed. And then it turns out it wasn't Israel at all. It was this offshoot of Hamas, and all of this stuff going on. And tired Joe appears.
Explosion at the hospital in Gaza yesterday. And based on what I've seen, it appears as though it was done by the other team, not you.
He says the other team. Now, that phrase, the other team, when I played this the first time in the 5 o'clock hour, a lot of super texters picked out, he said the other team? I mean, they're terrorists, Joe. So feel free to call them what they are, which is terrorists. And I do understand that, Joe has a hard time. I mean, obviously, Joe has a hard time. And 6282 says, I am so embarrassed and ashamed that this is our president and representing our country. And 6282, you are absolutely right.
I was deeply saddened and outraged by the explosion at the hospital in Gaza yesterday. And based on what I've seen, it appears as though It was done by the other team, not you. But there's a lot of people out there not sure. So we got to overcome a lot of things.
And Biden said we've got to overcome a lot of things. I took that as, trust but verify. Now, you could say that what the president is saying is we need to convince all of these, Arab nations who are out there, burning down, our consulates and everything else, where and our embassies, where you have our buildings burned to the ground before there is even any proof. And so one of the things that I said during Red Eye Radio is, Israel can provide all of the information, all of the proof that this was, this offshoot of Hamas. But they're not going to be convinced. And so if Biden thinks that he's going to be able to convince Iran or, the people in Gaza or Jordan or some of these other nations, Lebanon, if Biden believes that he's going to be able to convince those nations that it was, it was actually this offshoot of Hamas, he's mistaken. Because it doesn't matter the proof, it doesn't matter the evidence. They will blame Israel because that's their narrative.
And also means encouraging life-saving capacity to help the Palestinians who are innocent, caught in the middle of this. And, at any rate, that's who we are. Not just me, but that's who the United States is.
No, Joe. I just picked up. It's so funny. You know what the funny thing about this audio, Johnny and Ken, is the more that I listen to it, the more I hear things that I don't like. For example, when he said...
And, at any rate, that's who we are. Not just me, but that's who the United States is.
No, Joe. Here in the United States, we don't call terrorists the other team. We call terrorists terrorists. There's so much here that is wrong. Part of what Biden had to say is, again, basically, we're here for Israel, which is absolutely the right thing to say. He kind of should have stopped there.
And it's just not the example of our power, it's the power of our example. It's almost as important. The world's looking. Israel has a value set like the United States does and other democracies. And they're looking to see what we're going to do.
Well, the world, you're right, Joe, is looking to see what we're going to do. And the entire world is thinking that you need a nap. He started out the first 30 seconds of that, 2.5 minute soundbite. He came out strong, but then as time went on, he just got slower and slower, and his eyes got, beadier and beadier. When he gets really tired, his eyes start to squint. That's what happened with Biden. And once again, we are embarrassed on the world stage. And by the way, when you continue to listen to what Biden had to say.
So, Mr. Prime Minister, I'm very happy to be back in Israel with you. Thank you for having me. And I'm looking forward to having a thorough discussion about where everybody goes from here. But thank you. And I want to say to the people of Israel, their courage, their commitment, their bravery is stunning. It's really stunning.
I don't know about you, but I don't find the courage and the bravery of the Israelis stunning. You know that they're courageous. You know that they're brave because they've been, dealing with Hamas and they've been dealing with the Palestinians and these kinds of attacks and these kinds of wars for years. But the other thing, if you listen to his audio and you listen to, the full 2.5 minutes, it does sound like what he's trying to do is, when he said the world is watching, what he's trying to do is set up Israel to try to get them to not go in with that 400,000 person strong ground force going into Gaza. It sounds like Joe wants to be able to speak to Benjamin Netanyahu and convince him not to go in. Try to convince Netanyahu that there are other options. And what was the first thing that all the experts said? All the experts said the same thing, which is, how do you make sure this doesn't happen again? You give Israel the ability and the birth to just do what they need to do and leave them alone. It's going to be sad. It's going to be bloody. It's going to be tragic. It's going to be horrifying. But war is hell, and so is Hamas. And what Israel needed to do and needs to do is take care of them once and for all. 622 on Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7. I like to call fall as open window weather. But if you've got old windows that are hard to open and close, well, that is an issue, which is why if you're thinking about getting new windows, you've got to call my friends at Window Nation. And another great deal going on right now. Get 2 windows free for every 2 that you buy, plus put no money down, make no payments, and pay no interest for 2 full years. Now, these are the folks that I turn to for new windows in my basement studio, and you should too. Great quality, great customer service, and new windows mean that you're going to save on your energy bills as well, up to 30% more. So call Window Nation today at 866-90-NATION, windownation.com. And again, remember that great deal. Get 2 windows free for every 2 that you buy. And there's no limit. Plus, put no money down, make no payments, and pay no interest for 2 full years. 866-90-NATION, 866-90-NATION, windownation.com.
For many of us, generators are becoming a must-have household appliance. From unpredictable weather to surprise outages, it's better to be safe than sorry. Generator Supercenter of Nashville offers fast and easy installations with 24/7 service and monitoring to all brands of generators and expert repairs done right. Our mission is to make owning a backup generator simple and easy. Visit your local store today or check us out online. Generator Supercenter of Nashville. We serve all Middle Tennessee.
Hey folks, I'm Paul Winkler. One of the things I've been hearing a lot from people lately is the concern about the dollar crashing. And you'll see this out there on the internet all over the place, articles written about it. And the idea is that the Russian and Chinese, those countries are looking at getting together and creating their own currency that will compete against the US dollar as a reserve currency. Now, for many, many decades, there have been other currencies that have been trying to vie for that status. And there's a possibility that you're going to have some that are going to encroach on that a little bit. But is it that big of a thing to worry about? Well, number one, last year, the Chinese currency made up very little of any kind of world trade, number one. But what is it that's really going on underneath the surface? A lot of it is trying to sell you newsletters and investments that you probably ought to stay away from. For example, one of the things I see is, well, you ought to buy gold because the dollar's going to crash. And you see all of these commercials out there, and I say, well, wait a minute, wait. They're trying to get you to buy gold with your what? They're looking to take your dollars. If they really believe what they're saying, why would they take your dollars for their gold? Number one. Number two, how do you protect yourself against these valuation changes in various currencies? Well, let me explain it this way. Let's say that you had a currency called the clam. Okay, and you had a country that had 1 clam and you could exchange it for $1 at any one point in time. Let's say that that's the case. And you had a widget that was sold by this country and you could buy that widget in that country for 1 clam. So you take your $1, you exchange it for a clam, and then you got your widget. Now what if the dollar weakens? Well, what happens, now this clam is the same, right? Nothing different here, it's the same deal. But instead of $1, now it takes $2 to get the clam. Now what happened? Your widget just doubled in price from your perspective as an American. Well, how do we use this to our advantage? As an investor, we want to make sure that we don't just myopically only focus on U.S. stocks. And that's a big mistake investors made from 2000 through 2010 and other periods in history, in the 1970s, the late 1980s, and so on and so forth. What we want to do is we want to make sure that we have good international diversification, because if the dollar weakens, then those international investments go up in value. So it's very, very important to know how globally diversified you really are as an investor. You want to learn more? Call us up for a free 15-minute consultation at paulwinkler.com, paulwinkler.com, and we'll walk you through what we do and see if we can be of help to you the investor out there that is so often being sold things that they really don't need to be buying.
Hair. 629-348-HAIR. Refine your hairline with the team that has redefined hair restoration. And don't forget to ask about that advanced hair guarantee. Tell them Dan Mandis told you to reach out. 629-348-HAIR. 629-348-HAIR. AdvancedHair.com.
President Biden in the war zone. Here in Nashville, city leaders have come to a decision about school security, and special investigative tools have been deployed at the scene of a deadly house fire in Middle Tennessee this morning. These stories and more at 6:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Listen to this headline. Aaron sent this to me. Apparently NBC's, I think this is Dana Bash, NBC's Bash media caused an anti-Israel fervor in Arab world by taking the word of terrorists at face value.
Interesting.
What was I just talking about? I was just talking about how earlier in the broadcast, and I've been covering this all night, where this hospital, Hamas was out there saying, look what Israel did. Look what Israel did.
Oh, yeah, it's all over social media.
When I got to work last night, a lot of the mainstream media still had Israel as the ones that attacked this hospital. Now, clearly, it is the evidence shows that this was not Israel. I'm going to ask Dakota Wood all about this and a flurry of other stories coming up at 6:35 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Friends, if you've always wanted to live by the lake, then you've got to listen to me for the next 60 seconds. Dan Mandis here for Lake Living TN. On Saturday, October 28th, you've got a great opportunity to pick up a lakeside property at a fraction of the cost. Now, these prices are incredible, but limited, so you've got to call now to reserve your private tour. But I want you to listen to these deals. 2-acre wooded lots are starting at just $64,000. Lake Village packages are starting at just $349,000, and the last remaining waterfront lots are $50,000 off. Lake Living TN, you've got to call them for your private tour. 865-408-9992. This highly anticipated community is just 20 minutes outside of Knoxville and features 10 miles of walking trails, over 3 miles of shoreline pickleball courts, and so much more. Check them out online at lakelivingtn.com. That's lakelivingtn.com. And remember, that's Saturday, October 28th. Reserve your private tour. 865-408-9992. Invest in something real. 865-408-9992.
.30 on the dot this Wednesday morning. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories, and it has gotten steadily cooler since I came to the studios this morning around 3 o'clock. Right now, we're at 40 degrees on Music Row. Full forecast and traffic in 5 minutes. Israel-Hamas war continuing coverage. President Biden says he traveled to Israel because he wanted the people there and around the world to know exactly where the U.S. stands.
I want to say to the people of Israel, their courage, their commitment, their bravery is stunning. It's really stunning. I'm proud to be here.
President said he would make sure Israel continues to have what it needs to defend itself against Hamas, but he appeared to reiterate his message to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu about civilian casualties.
The world's looking. Israel has a value set like the United States does. and other democracies. And they're looking to see what we're going to do.
Israel presenting credible evidence that one of Hamas's militant allies, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, was responsible for bombing that Christian hospital in Gaza. Right now in Nashville, $3 million in state money for school resource officers has been approved by the Metro Council, but some members don't want money. This is at-large member Delicia Porterfield, who wants more gun control.
We asked for gun reform, plain and simple. We asked for it. We demanded it. We marched. We protested. We cried. And we got money for police officers in schools.
Well, there still will be no SROs in Nashville elementary schools because Chief Drake says he doesn't have enough staff. This $3 million from the state's going to go to pay the officers in high schools and middle schools. Elsewhere in Middle Tennessee this morning, Channel 4 says TBI is assisting in the investigation of a house fire in which 2 children have been found dead. This in Millersville. Here's Ryan Breslin at the scene.
In that home that they lived in, you can see that it is now destroyed. We can see that the roof is collapsed. The siding has melted, and firefighters are still here hitting the house with water for hot spots.
The call came in around 1:30 this morning. TBI has deployed a K-9, they say, can detect if some sort of accelerant was used to start the fire. That's the latest news. Traffic and weather next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Hey everybody, Dan Mandis with Nashville's Morning News on WTN. I'm here at the Nashville Rescue Mission doing the interviews that I look forward to doing every single year. These are incredible stories of people who have had amazing recoveries. Thanks to this amazing facility, they are able to get clean and lead a more productive life. The date of our annual radiothon is going to be Monday, November 20th. Listen in and please donate. You can get more information at 99.7 WTN, including a link to the website for Nashville's Rescue Mission. 637, Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Along with Johnny B, Ken Weaver, Dan Mandis here. And want to welcome on into the radio program Dakota Wood from the Heritage Foundation, a foreign policy analyst. And always love, Dakota, having you on the radio program. So the president, there's so much that has happened over the past 24 hours. The president, as you know, now in Tel Aviv. Over the evening time, overnight, we had Iran telling Israel that time had run out. And we've been talking about this hospital that was bombed. Originally, everybody thought that it was Israel because the media took the word of Hamas. But now it looks like it was actually this offshoot of Hamas, the Islamic Jihad. Now, let's start with the hospital, if we could, Dakota, because we've got, from what Israel has put out, they've got radar tracks. They've got this intercepted phone call that clearly shows that the guys over there at Hamas, the terrorists at Hamas, they've realized that there's been a screw up and the missile failed and landed on this hospital and it blew up and got 500 or so people killed. Is the evidence overwhelming, Dakota, that this was not Israel that blew up this hospital?
Yeah, the documented evidence absolutely puts Israel in the clear. I mean, all the things you just mentioned, they're tracking their own airplanes. They know where an aircraft is at in the airspace and what attack run it's on. All that is documented by radar and by flight recorder data and all that stuff. Then you also have incoming rockets and missiles, whether it's from Gaza or southern Lebanon, fired by Hezbollah, or even from Syria. So all of this Iron Dome that we've heard so much about, this missile defense system, all of those radars are involved tracking things that are coming in. So in terms of radar tracks and signatures and trajectories, Israel has all that information. The question is, do we believe Israel? If you're in the Arab world or you're a propagandist for Hamas or you're down in Egypt, are you going to take Israel's word and not Hamas's? On the Hamas side, the rockets and the missiles that they use are notoriously inaccurate. So on the Iron Dome, the missile defense, it will track an incoming rocket. And if it's going to land harmlessly in the desert or something like that, then it doesn't engage. It's only when it's inbound for a population center or a key target. So when Hamas is firing these rockets, sometimes they're assembled in someone's basement or a parking garage. Sometimes they're shipped in ready-made, already manufactured by Iran. And so the accuracy of these things are pretty bad. And they can fire one, and it just goes fluey. I mean, it's just an errant shot, and it lands someplace where you didn't want it to. And all the data says that it was one of those errant rockets aimed at Israel that went off course and struck this hospital.
I got to tell you, it's interesting because you picked up on something that I have been mentioning, which is, okay, so we understand and accept that this was not Israel, but overnight, and I know that you know this, but we have protests in Turkey, in Iran, in Jordan, in some places. Embassies are being swarmed, or flags are being burned. Embassies are being burned as well. I mean, there really is no way to convince the Arab world that this was not Israel. Is there a way to convince them?
No, it's a mob mentality. I mean, that list of countries, Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan, Qatar, Iran, Spain, Egypt, Yemen. I mean, we even have our own U.S. representative, Tlaib, who the smoke hadn't even cleared from the hospital, and she was, on social media, a U.S. congressional representative blaming Israel before the facts were even known. So when you get into a mob mentality, passions, run. The people who want that mob to become violent, they foment that, they feed into it, and it's really, really hard to roll that back. I mean, one of the best expressions I've read in the last 12 hours or so is things are rapidly spiraling out of control. And you just get, again, I keep coming back to this mob mentality. People are getting really ginned up on this thing, and they're protesting, and it feeds on itself, and it's really hard to get that back in the box.
Dakota, I've got to ask you, President Biden is in Israel. Iran is, I don't know if you'd call it saber rattling, but Iran is saying time's up, and they're threatening to bomb Israel as our president is there. Do you think they are saber rattling, or do you believe that our president is actually in some real danger?
I don't think so, because that would bring the U.S. directly into the war. The murder, the assassination, killing of the U.S. president. The U.S. would have no choice to do that. Now, if you're a 12er in Shia Islam and you believe that the 12th Imam has been in hiding for many centuries, and it's going to take an apocalyptic event to bring that person back to save the world for Allah, then you do have this sect within Shiism that looks for these problems. So you could make the case that by killing the president or fomenting this incredibly broadening war in Israel creates the conditions for Shiism to become then dominant over Sunniism or any other religious beliefs. So there is speculative, a case to be made for that. But I think that Iran is going to hold itself back. It is afraid of an Israeli strike against its nuclear facilities. Israel certainly has the ability to do that. But where Iran can really win, if their agenda is the elimination of Israel, is just to continue to prompt Hezbollah and Hamas and Islamic Jihad. Islamic State still exists, and other terrorist entities there in Syria, to just start pummeling Israel. I mean, Hezbollah itself in southern Lebanon has in the neighborhood of 200,000 rockets and missiles. I mean, salvo density, you could just overwhelm Iron Dome and any other missile defense system that's in the area. So you combine that with several tens of thousands that Hamas still has out of Gaza, and rockets that we fired from the West Bank adjacent there to Jerusalem, and it could be a very, very ugly time. The question is, what then brings the U.S. into the war? Does that broaden it? Does Lebanon get involved, in Syria, in Egypt? Saudi Arabia has called off the effort to normalize relations with Israel. So you can see how this thing can just rapidly expand in a very dramatic, quick fashion. And all the calls for restraint are well-intended. I just don't know that the passions are going to be cooled sufficiently in the coming days.
6:45, Dakota, hold on. Got to check the roads. A busy morning here on Nashville's Morning News. Time to check the traffic from the Paul Winkler Investment, WTN Traffic Center. Mostly sunny today, a high of 72, and right now 42 at Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Dakota Wood with the Heritage Foundation is joining us. Dakota, did you happen to hear Joe Biden's opening salvo when he sat down to address Benjamin Netanyahu?
I didn't watch the news conference at all, but I've read about some of his comments. He was talking about the other team responsible, as if this is some kind of a replay of his football days or something like that. We've got Israel's back. He uses that in all of his statements, but there might be something specific that you want to key on here.
So it sounded to me, well, first of all, you read it, so you didn't have the opportunity to hear Joe Biden, but it was classic Biden, classic tired Biden. He went off script. He got lost in the middle of a story, and he did call Hamas the other team. People are aghast at that. But one of the things that he said is a few things. He said a few times, the world is watching, and he talked about, how the Gaza is full of, innocent Palestinians and it felt like he was sort of teeing up Benjamin Netanyahu to not send the 400,000 ground troops into Gaza. It sounded like, originally people have been saying that, we got to give Israel wide berth to let them do what they need to do to rid the world of Hamas. But now it seems like Joe is sort of tiptoeing that back when he says things like the world is watching, the innocent people in Gaza, and so forth.
it's always Israel that has to exercise restraint. I mean, that's the message that comes out of every capital, why Hezbollah and Hamas and Al-Qaeda and every other jihadi out there seems to be able to do whatever they want. I mean, they horrify us, but let's not do anything to make the problem worse. It's like Chamberlain saying, hey, I've got to deal with Herr Hitler after Hitler has annexed Sudetenland and gone into Poland and other locations there in Europe. So there is this abject fear of the war escalating and what the consequences to that would be. I mean, it would really, really be bad. And so, the president is trying to play both sides of this. We unfalteringly have Israel's back, but don't do anything, too extreme that might broaden this war. Well, Israel cannot tolerate Hamas existing as an entity that threatens the security of that country and the lives of its citizens. They just can't tolerate it. It would also invite Hezbollah and others to continue attacking. And what's Israel supposed to do? So, the president did mention kind of the equivalency of, on a population basis, that, 1,300, 1,400 Israelis killed is the equivalent to 40,000 or 50,000 Americans on a population basis. So can you imagine the U.S., showing restraint in the wake of 9/11? That George W. Bush would have gotten up on the rubble of the World Trade Center with a megaphone and said, I know we just lost nearly 3,000 of our fellow citizens, but let's exercise restraint before we go marching off to war against Al-Qaeda.
Exactly.
I mean, the public wouldn't have tolerated that. So, Hamas and Iran in particular has created this situation. Israel has to respond. Their hesitancy or delay going into Gaza is because they're piecing together exactly what it is they're trying to do. So yes, they've got a mobilized population, but urban warfare, urban combat is the most brutal, casualty-producing, difficult form of combat that you can possibly imagine. Streets are rubbled. It's hard to get armored vehicles in there. Every hidey hole is an ambush spot. The place has been strewn with all kinds of booby traps. I mean, it's just a very ugly situation, and you want to try to rescue the hostages, not just recover bodies. So Netanyahu and his commanders are trying to figure out how best to deal with this. And then we've got old Biden coming in, doesn't really project, confidence and strength and vigor and assuredness. So I don't know if this trip of his to Israel was a wise idea or not, but you can bet that the White House is going to use this as a campaign ad, showing the president going into a war zone, and how courageous was that. So there's politics strewn throughout this thing. I'm still with Israel, obviously, and they need to do what they need to do to protect their country and citizens.
Well, Dakota, if you do nothing else today, go find the actual video of Joe Biden, and so you can hear the weakness of Joe Biden on the world stage. And I very much appreciate you joining us here on Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7. Great analysis, great perspective from Dakota Wood from the Heritage Foundation. It's 6:51 on Super Talk 99.7. Your home, my friends, is a huge investment. USS is here to protect it. Now, that's who I turn to. Anytime I have a problem, I do call the experts in waterproofing and foundation repair and concrete leveling, to name just a few. Now, these folks have been helping customers for years, and they've got 25,000 100% satisfied clients, including me. Now, these folks are problem solvers. They arrive at your home to figure it out, and then they're going to fix it and communicate with you along the way. So what can USS help you with? Concrete lifting, foundation repair, basement and crawl space waterproofing, and so much more. USS has been helping Tennesseans since 1994. We guarantee our best. Call USS 615-488-7855. 615-488-7855. USSTN.com. Tell them Dan Mandis told you to reach out.
We really are passionate about our state. It's so beautiful, and we just want people and all Tennesseans to help us keep it that way. We really want to make sure that, our beauty, and from, west to east to even middle Tennessee, we want to make sure it's nice and clean for everyone to enjoy. I like to get people to volunteer and to get out there and keep our world clean, man. Litter's disgusting. No one likes it.
That's right. Yeah, if you ask my wife, I've always said, keep Tennessee beautiful. That's kind of been, I think I found a T-shirt or something a long time ago.
It's that marketing.
Yeah.
Really good job.
It's like,
yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no sense in throwing your trash out the window or when you're hunting or fishing, leaving the trash there on the bank or whatever. It's not worth it.
Currently, there are 88 million pieces of litter on Tennessee roadways at any given time in this state.
Wow.
And TDOT currently spends $23 million on picking up the litter, educating about the litter.
The Nobody Trashes Tennessee campaign, and there's some great videos out there. And I was watching the litter lessons and the show and get to know the Red Plastic Cup. Tell us a bit about the campaign and some of those characters. That's pretty neat.
So Red Plastic Cup, he thinks he's a movie star.
Uh-huh.
He thinks he's just the greatest thing ever. So he started off with a talk show, and then he got a movie. And in our movie, he got, more characters, and we had experts, water quality expert was Sal, the smallmouth bass.
Yeah.
And his bodyguard is Trash Watch. And if, we can go into Trash Watch a little bit too, but love Trash Watch.
President Biden in Israel amid the war with Hamas. Nashville city leaders make a decision on school security, and special investigative tools being used at the scene of a deadly house fire in Middle Tennessee this morning. These stories and more at 7 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
6:55 on Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 8287. Out of Murfreesboro says, hey, Dan, Dakota made an interesting point that Joe Biden is there for the optics. Can you imagine if that's true, that Biden went out there for the optics and he completely shanked that opening statement with Benjamin Netanyahu? I mean, I don't know how it could have gone any worse. I mean, I suppose it could have gone worse, but, he called Hamas the other team. He started his story, got lost in the middle of the story, had no idea where he was. And then, of course, again, he seemed to set the stage for Hamas for Israel to hold back on sending their 400,000 ground troops into Gaza. And it's just, I don't know how that opening statement could have gone any worse for the president. It is 6:57 on Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
7 o'clock on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Full forecast and traffic in 5 minutes. And now the Israel-Hamas war continuing coverage.
President Biden in Israel amid rising tensions in the war with Hamas. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu greeting him in Tel Aviv.
Mr. President, you're meeting with our united war cabinet, united and resolved to lead Israel to victory.
Arab leaders have canceled their Jordan summit with President Biden following the deadly hospital blast in Gaza. Hamas blames an Israeli airstrike. Israel says it came from an errant Islamic Jihad rocket. ABC News Chief Global Affairs correspondent Martha Raddatz has more from Tel Aviv.
This is a delicate and dangerous mission for the president, wanting to show support for Israel after the horrific tragedy the people suffered here, but also to make sure that innocent Palestinians who were shocked by last night's hospital explosion are cared for as well.
The Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry says at least 500 people were killed in that blast.
Now, Tennessee U.S. Senator Marsha Blackburn has filed legislation that strips U.S. funding from a group that is supposed to help the Palestinian people. Blackburn says Hamas is stealing that money, and the group that it goes to has Hamas terrorists on its staff. This year, the U.S. gave $153.7 million to this group. It's called the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees. Right now in Nashville, Metro Council has voted to accept $3 million in state money to help pay for SROs in every school. But some members, like District 30 Council member Sandra Sepulveda, they want more gun control instead.
I see this more as the state trying to wash its hands of its responsibility to pass adequate gun reform legislation, and I don't want to be a part of that.
I say let's take the state money to pay for this thing. It only makes sense.
Now, the vote was 23-12 with 2 abstentions to accept the money, but the Metro Police Department says it's going to go to pay the current officers they have in high schools and middle schools, which Chief John Drake says that's all he has the staff for. So there still will be no full-time SROs in any Nashville elementary school. Elsewhere in Middle Tennessee, TBI is involved in the investigation of a house fire in Millersville. 2 children found dead. Channel 4's Ryan Breslin reports from the scene.
TBI with special agent fire investigators and an accelerant detection canine. Now, that's a dog trained to detect explosives residue, and post-blast evidence. We do know from fire crews that are out here that they have turned over the investigation to TBI now, so any new information that we get will be coming from them.
Yeah, the initial call went out around 1:30 this morning. Market Numbers Report. Market Numbers brought to you by Beacon Capital Management. Online at beaconcm.com. Checking futures ahead of the opening bell this morning. Dow futures down 84. S&P down 18. NASDAQ futures down 77. That's the latest news. Traffic and weather next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Thank you, Ken. Mark Spain Real Estate. Get a guaranteed offer from Mark Spain Real Estate and sell your home hassle-free. Dan Mandis here. Did you know that Mark Spain Real Estate has nearly 10,000 five-star reviews, making them the #1 most reviewed real estate company in America? And as the most experienced real estate team, you can trust them to sell your home quickly and for the most money. It's all about the guaranteed offer. You know, Mark Spain Real Estate sells over 39 homes per day. And as the most experienced real estate team in America, they will sell your home stress-free with the strongest cash offer in the industry. Mark Spain Real Estate. Turn to them and you're going to get out of your home really fast. 855-299-SOLD is the phone number for Mark Spain Real Estate. 855-299-SOLD. Go to markspain.com to get a guaranteed offer on your home today. That's markspain.com and start packing. Hey everybody, Dan Mandis with Nashville's Morning News on WTN. I'm here at the Nashville Rescue Mission doing the interviews that I look forward to doing every single year. These are incredible stories of people who have had amazing recoveries. Thanks to this amazing facility, they are able to get clean and lead a more productive life. The date of our annual radiothon is going to be Monday, November 20th. Listen in and please donate. You can get more information at 99.7 WTN, including a link to the website for Nashville's Rescue Mission.
News with Dan Mandis.
And so, my fellow Americans,
We talk news. Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
7:07 Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. There's a lot of news going on this morning. Still no Speaker of the House. That story straight ahead. Ken Weaver, so...
Yes, Brother Dan Mandis.
I heard you talking about SROs.
Yes.
So I wonder, so your story tells us that still no SROs in elementary schools?
In Nashville, yes.
In Nashville.
Yeah, they're using other means of security.
They're using other means of security for elementary schools.
Yes.
Do they say what it is?
Yeah, they have police officers that patrol and go by and visit the schools on a pretty regular basis, but there is no permanent SRO in each elementary school like there is in every high school, which there are 2. And at least 1 in every middle school in Nashville.
None of that makes sense to me. And so you've got...
all you got is you got Chief John Drake saying, I don't have the staff to do that.
BS. I'm sorry, but BS. You know what I wonder? So, first of all, I believe that we are incredibly vulnerable right now. I don't want to scare folks, but I think that we're vulnerable with everything that's going on.
Absolutely, we
All
are.
these folks coming across the southern border, you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, this is supposedly another day of rage.
Yes, it is another day of rage. And so, you know, I guess part of my question for the super texters, do you buy John Drake's, oh, we can't find the people excuse? Do you buy that? I'm not sure if, I don't buy it. I think, and we've talked about this before, where Dr. Adrienne Battle, you know, she's in charge of the schools, and she is on record as saying that she doesn't want SROs in the elementary schools. And so it's my opinion that Chief John Drake is kind of obfuscating the real reason why we're not going to have SROs in elementary schools. I think that he's covering for Dr. Adrienne Battle. That's what I think. So, and I would be curious if the super texters, do you buy John Drake's excuse when he says, we just can't find the people? It is just hard for me to believe. And listen, I know that good help is hard to find. I still don't buy it. Now, it's 7:09. Coming up at 7:35, Ken, just so you know, programming alert.
All right.
Congressman Andy Ogles will be joining us about the absolute train wreck that we saw last night or yesterday in the House of Representatives as they tried to find a Speaker of the House, Jim Jordan, losing on his first try to become Speaker. And he lost not by a little. He lost by a lot. He was 20 votes short. The day started with Elise Stefanik. And John, I need some audio if I could. The day started with Elise Stefanik.
Our friend and colleague Jim Jordan is a patriot. He is an America First warrior who wins the toughest of fights, going after corruption and delivering accountability at the highest levels of government on behalf of we, the people. Jim is the voice of the American people who have felt voiceless for far too long. Whether as Judiciary Chair, conservative leader, or representative for his constituents in West Central Ohio, whether on the wrestling mat or in the committee room, Jim Jordan is strategic, scrappy, tough, and principled. He is a mentor, a worker, and above all, he is a fighter. And the American people know, we know, that Jim Jordan is a winner.
Nope, not at least yesterday. Despite that very confident prediction from Elise Stefanik, he fell short, like 20 votes short. So now they're going to try it again here in a couple of hours. But 20 Republicans opposed Jim Jordan. 7 votes went to Steve Scalise. 3 votes went to former New York Representative Lee Zeldin. 6 votes went to former Speaker Kevin McCarthy, among others. And some of those no votes were in Biden-friendly districts in New York. So one of the things that is going on is that you do see these first votes, these first round of votes, people will, utilize that first round as like a protest vote. Like, I don't like Jim Jordan, and there's no way in heck he is going to get a first-round vote out of me. But, maybe they'll go ahead and vote for him the second time around. But the bottom line is, Jordan, at the end of the day yesterday, he could have gone down a couple of different roads. He could have locked everybody in, or they could have tried to lock everybody in and said, we're going to keep going until we get this done. But he chose to call it a night, and that is exactly what they did. They're going to be back later on this morning. I think it's at 10 or 11 o'clock this morning Central Time when they're going to start the voting process again. But, a lot of folks talking about what happened in the lead up. And I told you a little bit about this yesterday, where there was this high-pressure campaign with Jim Jordan and especially his allies. And so it's being described as actually bullying members who were anti-Jordan. So if you're a moderate, let's say you're Steve Scalise. So if you're a moderate and you're Steve Scalise and you're no way in hell you're going to vote for Jim Jordan, well, you have constituents, you have your constituents calling your office, high-pressure campaign. You've got, other Congress people calling your office, really high-pressure campaign. You've got the supporters of Jim Jordan showing up at your doorstep. And Byron Donalds, so one of my favorites, congressman out of Florida, he was actually asked, this high-pressure campaign that, Jim Jordan and his supporters and, constituents were placing on the moderates, did that actually backfire?
Was any of that a turnoff for some of these members?
I believe it was. I've talked to a couple of members where they felt that that's just not what they needed. I don't think that's what we should be doing right now. And listen, for all of the voters in our country, I think it's important for members to hear your voice, and I totally respect that. But I think that there are members up here who they want to be able to make this decision on leadership and then move forward. I think some of the pressure campaigns have backfired. They have not worked. And so I think that right now, under the leadership of Jim Jordan, I would request that people just take a break, take a pause, let the members work and figure this out amongst ourselves so we can elect Jim Jordan as Speaker, and then we can get back to the work that we have to do.
Oh, and I've got some great audio coming up from Trey Gowdy, another one of my favorites, and how he describes, because, big part of the news cycle today is a lot of folks talking about the dysfunction in Washington, D.C. So coming up, some terrific audio from Trey Gowdy and how he describes the Republican Party, something you've got to hear to believe. And it is straight ahead at 7:15. Time to check the roads from the Paul Winkler Investment WTN Traffic Center. Thank you, Jack. Mostly sunny today. High of 72, 40 now at Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Thank you for joining us on Nashville's Morning News. So just to tell you how much of a train wreck the Republican Party is right now, and I believe that it is a train wreck, whether you are, pro, because I'm very pro Jim Jordan. I mean, I think that even though I'm frustrated with some of the things that I'm hearing, some concessions that perhaps he may be giving, at the end of the day, we need a speaker. We need to figure out a way to get stuff done. And I think that Jordan right now, far better than Steve Scalise. But one of the questions is going to be, how much power will a Jim Jordan have? But more on that in a second. Trey Gowdy was on Fox News as well. And he was saying, this isn't really about Jim Jordan. It's about some of the other folks that are in Jim Jordan's camp, as he talks about that high-pressure campaign that Byron Donalds was discussing.
Jim Jordan was pretty well loved
5 years ago. He's much better loved now. So I don't think this is about Jimmy. It is about his supporters. And that is what I am consistently hearing up to and including in the last hour. It is not Jim Jordan. It is the fact that Kevin McCarthy was the victim of a drive-by shooting orchestrated by a small group of people.
Yeah, and we all know what happened to Kevin McCarthy. We have covered that incessantly here on WTN since January, as a matter of fact. And so you did have Matt Gaetz and a few others torpedo Kevin McCarthy. Those people are supporters of Jim Jordan. And note that Jordan voted to keep McCarthy. So, this is like cliques in high school, and one group pitted against the other. That's kind of how I see this whole thing playing out. Steve Scalise did not get the votes from the Jordan supporters in that round. So now the moderates are refusing to vote for Jim Jordan in spite of the fact that he's got some support there. Here's more from Trey Gowdy.
Politics is always fractured, but what they're doing in the room right now is really, they're trying couples counseling for people who want to kill each other.
Oh, my gosh.
It's not going... having a marriage and family counselor for this level of division and these fissures, I cannot overstate how angry some Republican members are with Jordan supporters. Not Jordan, his supporters.
All right. So you've got the moderates not voting for Jordan, basically to spite his supporters. So we'll have to see what happens later on. To me, this all does feel completely insane. And I do understand this is how the sausage is made. I totally get it. And by the way, this kind of finagling, wrangling, whatever you want to call it, these kinds of battles, they happen all the time. You have Democrats versus Democrats. You have Republicans versus Republicans. You have Republicans versus Democrats. This is what happens in our nation's capital. Now, all Democrats, as you can imagine, yesterday voted for Hakeem Jeffries, who actually got more votes than Jim Jordan. Jeffries got 212, Jordan got 200. So now, because as I say, you've got these folks on the left, they are just enjoying the living crap out of this. I mean, they are. Especially over there on CNN, where Phil Mattingly described it this way.
I mean, they're literally pouring gasoline on themselves and just lighting themselves on fire at this point, and don't seem to be dissuaded by the burns at all. Can you tell people why this matters? Like from a tangible perspective, beyond the kind of hilarity of the ineptitude and the ridiculousness of the moment.
I mean, that's how this whole thing is being framed by folks on the left, and yes, the mainstream media as well. Now, coming up, I am going to tell you what Hakeem Jeffries wants if the Republicans have to turn to the Democrats for the ability to get a Speaker of the House, because there's a lot of questions as to whether or not the Republicans are going to be able to settle on a Speaker. And at some point, and I don't want them to do this, and this is going to be an absolute disaster if they do decide that they need to turn to the Democrats. 7:20 on Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7. Everything is changing so fast these days, and that is a great thing. Now, back in my day, we were lucky if we could get one video to load on our desktop computer. But now there is the Xfinity 10G network. Now, that means the fastest internet with faster speeds rolling out all the time, and internet that can power a house full of devices all at once with extra low lag. So while one person is streaming a movie from their room, another can be playing video games in the basement, still another YouTubing in the kitchen. It is the next generation 10G network only from my friends at Xfinity. The future starts now. And now through November 15th, new customers can get 75 megabit internet on the next generation Xfinity 10G network for just $20 a month for 12 months with no annual contract. Go to Xfinity.com/10G. That's Xfinity.com/10G. Call 1-800-XFINITY or visit a store today. Requires paperless billing and auto pay with stored bank account. Restrictions apply. Equipment, taxes, and fees extra. After promo, regular rates apply to internet service. Actual speeds vary.
For many of us, generators are becoming a must-have household appliance. From unpredictable weather to surprise outages, it's better to be safe than sorry. Generator Supercenter of Nashville offers fast and easy installations with 24/7 service and monitoring to all brands of generators and expert repairs done right. Our mission is to make owning a backup generator simple and easy. Visit your local store today or check us out online. Generator Supercenter of Nashville. We serve all Middle Tennessee.
Hey folks, I'm Paul Winkler. One of the things I've been hearing a lot from people lately is the concern about the dollar crashing. And you'll see this out there on the internet all over the place, articles written about it. And the idea is that the Russian and Chinese, those countries are looking at getting together and creating their own currency that will compete against the US dollar as a reserve currency. Now, for many, many decades, there have been other currencies that have been trying to vie for that status. And there's a possibility that you're going to have some that are going to encroach on that a little bit. But is it that big of a thing to worry about? Well, number one, last year, the Chinese currency made up very little of any kind of world trade, number one. But what is it really going on underneath the surface? A lot of it is trying to sell you newsletters and investments that you probably ought to stay away from.
You from doing
For example,
everyday
one of the things I
activities?
see is, well,
So
you ought to
the
buy
Dr. Gill
gold
Center
because
for
the
Back,
dollar's
Neck,
going to
and Chronic
crash.
Pain Relief wants
And
you.
you see
Hi,
all
it's
of these
Pamela Furr, and
commercials
we're
out
looking
there,
for
and I
5
say,
people
well, wait
who
a minute,
suffer with
wait.
chronic back, neck,
They're
or shoulder
trying to get
pain
you to
and want
buy
experience
gold
significant relief
with
in the
your
next 30
what?
days without
They're
pills
looking
or
to
surgery.
use you
The
to take
Dr.
your
Gill
dollars.
Center has helped over
If they really believe what they're
25,000 people
saying,
get
why
back
would
to
they
living
take
their
your
best life.
dollars
But hurry,
for their
this is limited
gold?
to the
Number
first
one.
5 callers.
Number two, how do you protect yourself against these
4837
valuation changes in various currencies? Well, let me explain it this way. Let's say that you had a currency called the clam. Okay, and you had a country that had one clam and you could exchange it for $1 at any one point in time. Let's say that that's the case. And you had a widget that was sold by this country and you could buy that widget in that country for 1 clam. So you take your $1, you exchange it for a clam, and then you got your widget. Now what if the dollar weakens? Well, what happens now, this clam is the same, right? Nothing different here. It's the same deal. But instead of $1, now it takes $2 to get the clam. Now, what happened? Your widget just doubled in price from your perspective as an American. Well, how do we use this to our advantage? As an investor, we want to make sure that we don't just myopically only focus on U.S. stocks. And that's a big mistake investors made from 2000 through 2010 and other periods in history, in the 1970s, the late 1980s, and so on and so forth. What we want to do is we want to make sure that we have good international diversification, because if the dollar weakens, then those international investments go up in value. So it's very, very important to know how globally diversified you really are as an investor. You want to learn more? Call us up for a free 15-minute consultation at paulwinkler.com, paulwinkler.com, and we'll walk you through what we do and see if we can be of help to you, the investor out there that is so often being sold things that they really don't need to be buying.
From the Paul Winkler Investments WTN Traffic Center.
How do we normally choose a company when we need help? We take advice from others. If you're choosing a weight loss program, choose the one most highly recommended, Awaken 180. With a 98% customer satisfaction rating, find your solution at awaken180weightloss.com.
President Biden in the war zone. Nashville city leaders vote on a school security matter, and a deadly house fire under investigation in Middle Tennessee. These stories and more at 7:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Thank you, Ken. 7:27 on Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. So I asked the question, do you believe Police Chief John Drake when he says that staffing is a problem and that's why we can't seem to find enough elementary SROs and elementary school SROs? And I think there's a lot of folks that are saying, and maybe I'll get the folks from the Nashville police on, and we can talk about this because they're saying, and a lot of folks, and I've actually reported this many times, that there is a shortage of police officers. And so when I asked, do you believe that John Drake, when he says that they can't find enough people to be SROs, I guess my question is, okay, so is there another pool or is there a different process to hire an SRO versus a police officer? I believe, I think the training is a little different, but a lot of people don't believe Chief Drake. Some people do. And so I'm going to see if I can get, some of the folks that matter on to talk about that because, I've got like 7 or 8 people right now on the super text line that are saying, sign me up. I've got my permits and I'm more than happy to serve as an SRO. Tell me what training I need to take. So I see that, and I don't know, maybe I can finally get Chief Drake on after how many years have I been trying to get Chief Drake on?
Ever since he's been chief.
Ever since he's been chief. It was like literally I was when I heard that he was the police chief, I picked up the phone and I called his people.
Did his people call you back?
What's that?
Did his people call you back?
No, they didn't.
Put you on ignore, did they?
Not the first time, not the second time, not the third time. But listen, I'm not bitter. That's all good. It's fine. Because I actually, look, I don't have a problem with Chief Drake. I like some of the things that he's done. I don't hate everything that the man has done. I think he's got a lot of good qualities. And I just, one of the things that I said, actually, when this whole thing was a story, way back when, I said to the people over there at Chief Drake's office, I said, come on, WTN, come on the morning show and talk about recruiting for SROs. John, did you have these sound effects for the cricket sound effects? Because that's what I got back. It's 7:29 on Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I want to tell you about my friends at Cove Generators. Winter is on the way, and with it, possible snow, ice, and power outages. Are you ready? Dan Mandis here for Cove Generators. Now, they are experts in keeping your power on and your family safe. Now, be prepared this winter with a Generac home standby generator, the best generators around to keep your heat on if your power goes out. Now, Cove Generators, they are your premier Generac home standby generator dealer. Call them today and be prepared for winter. Now, at Cove Generators, all they do is generators. So they know what they're doing, and they do it at a fair price and great customer service. If you've already got a generator, call them to perform maintenance on your Generac automatic standby generator or any brand generator you own. 931-559-3311. Find them online, covegenerators.com, and never lose power again. 931-559-3311. Terms and conditions may apply. Call for details. Tell them Dan Mandis told you to reach out, covegenerators.com.
$7:30 on the dot this Wednesday morning. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Got the full forecast and traffic in 5 minutes. Continuing coverage, Israel-Hamas war. President Biden in Israel speaking at a meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his newly formed war cabinet in Tel Aviv.
We will continue to have Israel's back as you work to defend your people.
President Biden says Israel did not fire the missile that killed hundreds of people at a hospital in Gaza, but he appeared to reiterate his message to Netanyahu about civilian casualties.
The world's looking. Israel has a value set like the United States does and other democracies, and they're looking to see what we're going to do.
Tennessee U.S. Senator Marsha Blackburn's filed legislation stripping U.S. funding from a group that is supposed to help Palestinian people, but she says is instead being stolen by Hamas. This year, the U.S. gave $153.7 million to the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees. Blackburn says that group employs Hamas members. Right now in Nashville, $3 million in state money for school resource officers has been approved by the Metro Council, but some members don't want money. This is at-large member Delisha Porterfield, who wants more gun control.
We asked for gun reform, plain and simple. We asked for it. We demanded it. We marched. We protested. We cried. And we got money for police officers in schools.
Now, there'll still be no SROs in Nashville elementary schools because Chief Drake says he doesn't have enough staff. Elsewhere in Middle Tennessee, TBI's taken over the investigation of a house fire in Millersville. Channel 4's Ryan Bresna says 2 children found dead in the fire, for which the first calls came in around 1:30 this morning.
We know that multiple fire crews from both Robertson County and Sumner County were out here at this home off of Highway 31 West. They worked for about 1 hour to get this fire under control. They actually said it only took about 10 minutes, though, to really bring those flames down.
TBI has a canine on scene that can detect whether accelerant was used to start a fire. That's the latest news. Traffic and weather next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Stan Mandis here with a question for you. If your roof was destroyed in a storm, how much of that replacement cost would your insurance company cover? Now, if you don't know, you really do need to ask, because some insurance companies refusing to pay full replacement cost when your roof is destroyed. What they're going to do is they're going to deduct money for an older roof. Now, that means that the insurance company will depreciate how much they pay for your roof claim. An older roof, they pay you less. That could leave you on the hook for thousands of dollars. Now, my friends at King & Associates Insurance, they will pay full replacement cost. So whether you have to replace a 20-year-old roof or a 2-year-old roof, they pay for it to be replaced, period. No questions asked. It is really that kind of focus on customer service that makes King & Associates Insurance one of the best insurance companies around. So call them today and tell them Dan told you to reach out. 615-329-8121. 615-329-8121. Get your royal review at tkinginsurance.com. 737 Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Thank you very much for joining us. Want to welcome on into the program 5th Congressional District Congressman Andy Ogles joining us. And Andy, a lot of people are saying that what happened with Jim Jordan yesterday, some are saying it's a train wreck. Some are saying, listen, this is how it's done in Washington, D.C. So let's talk about, number one, what happened yesterday, and number two, what is going to happen today here in just a couple of hours. And so a couple of things. Jim Jordan, he fell, far short, and 17 or 20 votes. I know that it felt like anyway, a lot. And some people are saying that, and I know that you voted for Jim Jordan, but a lot of these more moderate folks didn't. When you went into the vote, did you folks realize that it was going to be that far off?
Yeah, so if you think back to January, I was one of those that held up the Speaker's fight with McCarthy, not because we had any problems with McCarthy, but because we were trying to change the rules package and how the House of Representatives works. You can now offer amendments, you can cut spending, doing the things that a member of the House of Representatives should be able to do. So there was 20 that did that, and so today you have 20 that is holding up Jim Jordan. We totally knew that he was going to fall short of the numbers. I had put on social media that I felt it was going to be between 15 and 20 short. It turns out it was just right at the top side of that number. And quite frankly, I think the number will actually grow today. I think there's probably going to be somewhere between, say 26 and 32, so maybe 28 no votes for Jim Jordan. But what you're seeing is the K Street, the DC cartel, the lobbyist bloc, they don't want a Freedom Caucus member as the Speaker of the House. They don't want someone whose mission is to try to cut the budget and right the ship. And so they're fighting back. And the difference, though, between the 20 of us that in January, we were fighting for something. We were trying to get a rules package that empowered members of the House. We were trying to get a rules package that really, fixed how Congress functions, whereas these folks just don't like Jim, or they just don't want someone who's going to cut spending. That message isn't going to hold, and so it'll get worse, I believe, before it gets better.
There's a lot to unpack there, but real quick, I was watching Fox News, played some audio earlier where we had a couple of different folks that have been quoted now as saying that there was a behind-the-scenes pressure campaign from Jim Jordan, but also the supporters of Jim Jordan that were just really, calling folks. One person said that, they were threatened with a primary. And so I guess one of the questions that is being asked is, did that backfire? This hard pressure sell?
Well, it's somewhat ironic, I think, that the House of Representatives is called the People's House. It's your elected official at the federal level that's easiest to get to. We're elected every 2 years so that there's accountability. So when we're coming into the Speaker's fight, we actually reached out to the district. We polled it twice. I called various leaders of the grassroots factions within the 5th Congressional District and said, what are you thinking? What are you hearing? What would you like for me to do? I wanted that feedback from my district. And now you have members of Congress who are like, oh, no, don't call. We don't, that scares us. That's ridiculous. You have a job to do. The people have spoken. They want you to vote for Jim Jordan. And let's across the country, by the way, Jim Jordan, Trump, like him or not like him, he's the most popular Republican in the country. You know who number 2 is? The second most popular Republican in the country? It's Jim Jordan. So these members of Congress have a choice. They can vote with K Street, the lobbyists, or they can vote with Main Street, which is hardworking Americans. And I tell you, the choice is obvious. They need to vote with Main Street.
So tell me the process. We know the names, the people that have voted to not confirm Jim Jordan. These are people, some of them are in New York. They are in districts that Joe Biden won. You've got some folks that voted for 7 votes for Steve Scalise. 3 went to Lee Zeldin, former New York representative. 6 votes went to former Speaker Kevin McCarthy. And so one of the things that I knew this, but people have been pointing this out as well, is that sometimes that first vote is almost like a protest vote, but then the second vote, they'll, fall in line. But you're saying that there could actually be more people say that they're not going to vote for Jim Jordan. Well, then I guess my question is, you guys prepared to go 15 rounds again? And it doesn't exactly instill a lot of confidence. And I say that as a guy who really likes Jim Jordan. I would love to see him as the speaker.
Well, so for example, and I'll speak in broad strokes, but like if you look at the New York guys, kind of what you said, they voted for Lee Zeldin. He a former congressman, former member of the Freedom Caucus, by the way, ran for governor, got close. So for them, that vote was a cover to kind of vote for and lift up the hometown boy. That totally makes sense. And I think you'll see, whether it's round 2 or round 3, your New York delegation come over to a Jim Jordan because they really don't have a fight there with him, right? Now, when you look at the folks in that 20 that are your more dug in, your harder core nose, they're all appropriators, meaning they're more beholden to the lobbyists, or they're heavily involved in on the defense spending, so ergo they're more beholden to the lobbyists. And so this really comes down to the members of Congress that are most beholden to K Street, and the lobbyists are the ones that are most fervently fighting against America's pick for speaker, which is Jim Jordan. And I just don't think, again, go back, like we had a clear in January. It wasn't about McCarthy. I like McCarthy. He's always been good to me. He's never treated me wrong. He's never done anything that I can say. He's never disparaged me, right? But it was about the rules package. We're fighting for this to make it better for the American people so we can fix this runaway budget. Now, that was a clear and articulated message. These folks, a lot of them are voting against Jim Jordan because they don't like the Freedom Caucus. Some of them are voting against Jordan because they don't like Matt Gaetz. Some of them are just angry. They're like a toddler throwing a temper tantrum. Well, that's not a clear and concise message. You can't articulate, why you're doing it and what's the end game there. And so I just think that it'll be a slow process. I do believe Jim Jordan is willing to go the distance. He's a very competitive person, quite frankly. So him going 15 or 16 rounds is more than reasonable. And I put on social media last night that I'll go 100 rounds for Jim Jordan. I went 15 in January. I'll go 100 for Jim.
7:45, very quickly, time to check the roads from the Paul Winkler Investment WTN Traffic Center. Thank you very much. As far as your weather today, mostly sunny, a high of 72, 42 now at Super Talk 99.7. Andy Ogles, Congressman Andy Ogles, is joining us on the Newsmaker Hotline on WTN. All right, so, Congressman, let me ask you this. One of the things that I'm worried about is Jim Jordan making a lot of concessions in order to get these votes, concessions to the moderates. And so one of the things that I saw was he had agreed to combine Ukraine and Israel funding. And it's my opinion that those should be two separate asks, and they should be able to stand alone, and we should be able to debate both of those separately. But I read, and I don't know if this is true, but I read in a couple of different places that Jim Jordan has agreed to do that. So is there a worry that he is going to have to make some concessions to the moderates in order to get the speakership?
Well, so, let's use the Ukraine funding, Israeli funding as a package. He doesn't necessarily guarantee passage, right? And so if he bundles those, it comes to the House floor, and quite frankly, myself and others defeat it because we're going to hold the principle. We, like you said, let's have a debate on Ukraine, and let's debate and ask those questions of why are we doing it? What's our exit strategy? What does peace look like? Those are questions that have to be answered for the American people that haven't been answered yet. So even if you support the war in Ukraine, those questions need to be answered. There's got to be an accountability for those dollars. The Israeli question, again, it should stand on its own. And I'll also say, you'll probably hear some pressure. The White House is going to put forward requests for funding for Israel. There's plenty of money on the table for Israel already. The White House could write $1 billion, B as in Bravo, $1 billion check to Israel today. It's already been appropriated. They don't need Congress's permission. So that's kind of a red herring conversation to apply pressure. What Israel needs is for the United States to get out of their way, plain and simple. For too long, we have meddled in their foreign policy. For too long, we've held them back. If there were radicals in Mexico bombing Houston, we would occupy Mexico City within 72 hours, and we might not ever give it back. And so we would do so to protect our homeland. We need to get out of the way and let the Israelis protect their homeland, whatever that looks like. Now, that being said, back to Jim Jordan, I don't see him making concessions that would be – he's not going to sell us out if that's what you're asking. That's just not who he is. Now, again, I think it's completely reasonable to say, okay, I'll take it to the floor as you've requested, but he also knows that there's for those of us out there that are principled and that we think these questions should be asked separately, they should be voted on separately, and we're going to try to hold the House of Representatives accountable. That goes back to January where we were fighting for principled reasons versus these folks at 20 that just are angry. They're like toddlers throwing a temper tantrum.
Okay, so I may have missed this, Congressman Ogles, the motion to vacate. If Jim Jordan does make it to the gavel and he does become Speaker of the House, is that motion to vacate, is that still part of the deal, or is that going to be gone?
It should always be part of the deal. That dates back to the 1800s, the Jefferson's manual, until Pelosi, which is very recent history. The motion to vacate has always been, in some form or fashion, part of the Speaker's chair. So if you go back to Cannon, the Cannon building, which is an office building with Speaker of the House, there was rumors, I think it was like 1911, don't hold me to that number, but there was rumors that someone was going to try to vacate the chair. So he himself walked down to the well, he put on the desk, I resolved that the chair is vacant. He vacated himself. One person did it, and he put it to a vote, and he was reelected as Speaker. And so this idea that would be off the table because it's Jim Jordan, I've said it before, well before this situation, whether it was Jim Jordan running for Speaker, and I literally would use his name, whether it was Mark Green running for Speaker, who is a friend of mine, I would still want the motion to vacate because that's part of it's an accountability mechanism that I have as a rank and file member to keep my Speaker honest. It's got to be there, whether it's Jim, whether it's you, whether it's me, whether it's Mark Green.
All right. And I'm assuming you got any bold, just in 30 seconds or less, any bold predictions? You said, okay, so maybe he's going to lose more support in the second round.
Yeah. I'll predict today that the number will be 28 no votes. My guess is we vote once, maybe twice. We might vote later tonight, but then we'll come back again tomorrow and re-vote. But I'm going to predict 28 no votes. But I'm saying Jim Jordan's in this for the long haul. He's a fighter, and ultimately, I think he'll be a uniter.
How many rounds? That's what I want to know. How many rounds is this going to go?
It's going to go, I would say it'll be like January. It'll go 15, 16 rounds.
Okay. Congressman Andy Ogles, thank you very much for joining us here on Nashville's Morning News and Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Johnny, Ken, you guys got a prediction? How many rounds is this thing going to go?
I tend to go along with Congressman Ogles.
You can say 15, 16?
I'll say 15, 16.
All right.
They're going to have to work out some sort of deal.
Yeah,
some sort of deal is going to have to be worked out that everybody's going to have to hold their nose and vote for.
Listen, I've got a great deal for you from my friends at Zero Res. Fall is here. That means cold and flu season is just around the corner. Get your home Zero Res healthy by cleaning the largest filter in your home. That is, of course, your carpet. With an almost 10-year-old in the house, this is really important for me. Those germs get trapped in your carpet, and that can impact your family's health. Protect them with Zero Res. Now, this is the carpet cleaning company that I trust, and clearly I'm not the only one. They've got over 3,600 Google reviews and 700 Facebook reviews as well at Zero Res. And Beth in Nashville says that their tech was polite, on time, and hardworking. Zero Res went the extra mile, and these days that's rare. Beth and thousands of others have great things to say about Zero Res, as do I. Now, right now, they've got that great deal going on. 3 rooms of carpets cleaned for only $119 plus a free hallway. You also get 20% off of air duct cleaning as well. Restrictions may apply. Call them. Tell them you want that Dan deal. 615-535-9376. 615-535-9376. ZeroResNashville.com. Spell it backwards or forwards. It is the right way to clean.
Hey folks, I'm Paul Winkler. One of the things I've been hearing a lot from people lately is the concern about the dollar crashing. And you'll see this out there on the internet all over the place, articles written about it. And the idea is that the Russian and Chinese, those countries are looking at getting together and creating their own currency that will compete against the US dollar as a reserve currency. Now, for many, many decades, there have been other currencies that have been trying to vie for that status. And there's a possibility that you're going to have some that are going to encroach on that a little bit. But is it that big of a thing to worry about? Well, number one, last year, the Chinese currency made up very little of any kind of world trade, number one. But what is it that's really going on underneath the surface? A lot of it is trying to sell you newsletters and investments that you probably ought to stay away from. For example, one of the things I see is, well, you ought to buy gold because the dollar's going to crash. And you see all of these commercials out there, and I say, well, wait a minute, wait. They're trying to get you to buy gold with your what? They're looking to take your dollars. If they really believe what they're saying, why would they take your dollars for their gold? Number one. Number two, how do you protect yourself against these valuation changes in various currencies? Well, let me explain it this way. Let's say that you had a currency called the clam. Okay, and you had a country that had one clam and you could exchange it for $1 at any one point in time. Let's say that that's the case. And you had a widget that was sold by this country and you could buy that widget in that country for 1 clam. So you take your $1, you exchange it for a clam, and then you got your widget. Now what if the dollar weakens? Well, what happens, now this clam is the same, right? Nothing different here. It's the same deal. But instead of $1, now it takes $2 to get the clam. Now, what happened? Your widget just doubled in price from your perspective as an American. Well, how do we use this to our advantage? As an investor, we want to make sure that we don't just myopically only focus on U.S. stocks. And that's a big mistake investors made from 2000 through 2010 and other periods in history, in the 1970s, the late 1980s, and so on and so forth. What we want to do is we want to make sure that we have good international diversification, because if the dollar weakens, then those international investments go up in value. So it's very, very important to know how globally diversified you really are as an investor. You want to learn more? Call us up for a free 15-minute consultation at paulwinkler.com, paulwinkler.com, and we'll walk you through what we do and see if we can be of help to you, the investor out there that is so often being sold things that they really don't need to be buying.
Israel-Hamas war, President Biden in the war zone. We'll tell you what he had to say and the reaction. Nashville city leaders have come to a decision on school security. These stories and more at 8 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Thank you, Ken. 7:57 on Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Coming up, I think I'm trying to decide what I want to do.
All right, let's hear it, Brother Dan.
Because, I've done Israel. I've done Biden and that, really terrible, little speech he gave in front of Benjamin Netanyahu. Yeah. We did that. I mean, I feel like I've got so many topics that I can do in the next segment.
Mm-hmm.
Have we done locally here? Have we done Trump and the gag order? I don't think we have. So we'll talk about Donald Trump.
yeah.
Some big Donald Trump news, by the way, is coming up next that I want to share with you on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
It's 8 o'clock on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Full forecast and traffic in 5 minutes. Right now, Israel-Hamas war continuing coverage.
President Biden in Israel. The trip coming at a tenuous time after a blast at a hospital in Gaza that Hamas blames on Israel and Israel blames on Islamic Jihad. ABC Chief Global Affairs correspondent Martha Raddatz is in Tel Aviv.
The head of the Palestinian Authority, President Mahmoud Abbas, canceling his meeting with the president, Jordan's King Abdullah doing the same. And Iran's foreign minister tweeting, "The time has come for the global unity of humanity against this fake regime, more hated than ISIS and its killing machine. Time is over."
Protests erupting in cities worldwide on Tuesday, including in Jordan, says ABC's Lana Moise.
Some trying to storm the Israeli embassy in Amman. Security forces using tear gas to disperse the crowd. Protesters in Iran also marched outside of the French and British embassies, setting fire to Israel's flag.
Tennessee U.S. Senator Marsha Blackburn's filed legislation that strips U.S. funding from a group that is supposed to help Palestinian people, but she says is instead being stolen by Hamas. This year, she says the U.S. gave $153.7 million to the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees. But Senator Blackburn says that group employs Hamas members. Right now in our nation's capital, the speaker's race continues. And having lost the votes of 20 Republicans yesterday, Jim Jordan vows he's going to keep trying. But Tennessee 5th District Congressman Andy Ogles tells WTN's Nashville's Morning News.
I think the number will actually grow today. I think there's probably going to be somewhere between, say 26 and 32, so maybe 28 no votes for Jim Jordan.
Top Democrat Hakeem Jeffries said some Republicans have been reaching out across the aisle to see about a compromise to get the House back in business. One option is a bipartisan agreement to give Speaker Pro Tempore Patrick McHenry of North Carolina more authority for now. Right now in Nashville, Metro Council's voted to accept $3 million in state money to help pay for school resource officers in every school. But some members, including District 30 Council member Sandra Sepulveda, argued more gun control is needed, not police officers.
I want this to be a clear message from me that it's time for us to look at other ways of helping our children in schools.
Well, the police department says this money, this $3 million from the state, is going to go to pay the current officers they have in high schools and middle schools. There still will be no full-time SROs in any Nashville elementary school. Market Numbers Report brought to you by Beacon Capital Management. Online at beaconcm.com. Futures ahead of the opening bell. Dow futures down 96, S&P down 22, NASDAQ down 101. That's the latest news. Traffic and weather next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Thank you, Ken. I want to tell you about my friends at Mark Spain Real Estate. Listen, if you need to get out of your house and you need to get out fast, you've got to call my friends at Mark Spain Real Estate and get a guaranteed offer on your home today. Now, they've been helping homeowners for years. They've got over 44,000 satisfied clients have trusted them to sell their homes when starting their next phase in life. Mark Spain Real Estate has nearly 10,000 five-star reviews, making them the #1 most reviewed real estate company in America. And as the most experienced real estate team, you can trust them to sell your home quickly and for the most money. They're also ranked on the Inc. 5000 list of the fastest growing companies in the U.S. for now the 7th year in a row. This is the company you want to call. Tell them Dan Mandis told you to reach out. 855-299-SOLD. 855-299-SOLD. You can also find them online. It's markspain.com to get a guaranteed offer on your home today. That's markspain.com and start packing.
Nashville's Morning News with Dan Mandis.
And go, my fellow Americans.
We talk news. Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
806, Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Thank you for listening to Nashville's Morning News, along with Johnny B, Ken Weaver as well. Dan Mandis here, and it has been a very busy morning. By the way, I do have tomorrow on the radio program, James Smallwood will be joining us, and he is going to talk about the lack of SROs in elementary schools here in Nashville. So we'll talk about that tomorrow, I think probably about 7:35 here on Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7. Okay, so I want to talk about this situation with Donald Trump, the gag order. Now, I don't know about you, But it seems to me like part of what's going on is that you have the left and you have those folks that are going after Donald Trump legally, the DOJ and the Biden administration. And what they want to do is they want to control the narrative. They want to control the court of public opinion. Because let's face it, that is part of what is going on. So right now, Donald Trump is under yet another gag order. I think this is number 2. It is like a partial gag order. Former President Donald Trump says now he is going to appeal the gag order placed on him by this Judge Tanya Chutkan. This is, of course, the case filed against him by Special Counsel Jack Smith regarding his culpability in January 6th. And so you all know that President Trump is charged with conspiracy to defraud the United States and obstructing an official proceeding. And so we already know that Donald Trump, and this is one of the things I love about him, but I also hate about him. He's got this incredible ability, this unique quality of being able to really go after people in the media and also those people that are going after him. For example, like attorneys general and so forth. And, somebody like Jack Smith, who the former president likes to refer to, Prosecutor Jack Smith, as deranged Jack Smith. And so, the former president, he had an issue. He had an episode. Do we all remember what that episode was? Where in this case in New York, where they're going after him for inflating his real estate values. Remember, we told you about all this. He bashed the judge and the attorney general, the New York attorney general, in that case for like 3 days straight. I mean, it was just every day, 3 days straight. There's Donald Trump in front of the media, and he's just, bashing everybody who is involved in the process. Now, I personally don't have a problem with that, but apparently everybody else did. So now you've got a number of things going on. Number one, what did Donald Trump do to earn the gag order? He went after the judge's clerk. Remember this? When he posted a link to her private Instagram account and called her Chuck Schumer's special friend. And there was a picture of the two of them together. So he quickly deleted it, but the point is that he posted the photo, and the judge in the case was really angry because Trump went after his clerk. And so he placed a gag order on Donald Trump in that case, and because of what he did in the New York case, now for the federal case, they've decided to put what I would say is a partial gag order on the president. I'll explain what a partial gag order means here in a second, but this is part of what the president is saying about the gag order. He's a little ticked.
A judge gave a gag order today. Did you hear that on speech? Which I believe is totally unconstitutional, what she did. A judge gave a gag order. A judge doesn't like me too much. Her whole life is not liking me. But she gave a gag order. You know what a gag order is? You can't speak badly about your opponent. But this is weaponry all being done because Joe Biden is losing the election and losing very, very badly to all of us in the polls. He's losing badly.
Yep.
But what they don't understand is that I am willing to go to jail if that's what it takes for our country to win and become a democracy again.
So that is former President Donald Trump talking about this gag order. Now, what exactly in the federal case with Jack Smith, what exactly is he allowed to talk about and what is he not allowed to talk about? There's one specific aspect of this that I have a big problem with. Tanya Chutkan's order prohibits Donald Trump from attacking special counsel Jack Smith, his prosecutors, officers of the court, or witnesses. Now, Trump's lawyer argued in court Monday that the order would be impossible to enforce and that Trump's criticism of the government is highly protected free speech that must be protected amid his presidential campaign. Now, the judge decided that Trump was subject to limitations as a criminal defendant and warned about the potential impact on a jury who will hear the case. But see, here's the thing, is that even though this is a gag order that goes both ways. Truth of the matter is that as we start to find out more about what the charges are and what the witnesses have to say in court, you know that there's going to be all kinds of folks talking about what is happening in this particular case. And so you're going to have all of these, legal analysts, and you're going to have all these people talking about, oh, my God, did you hear what happened in the Jack Smith case? And Donald Trump is not allowed to answer those allegations. So in the court of public opinion, what they're doing is they are really hurting Donald Trump's ability to defend himself. Here's the exact language, because the exact language is important. They say all interested parties in this matter, including the parties and their counsel, are prohibited from making any public statements or directing others to make any public statements that target, 1, the special counsel prosecuting this case or his staff, 2, defense counsel or their staff, 3, any of this court's staff or other supporting personnel, and 4, and this is the one that I have a problem with big time, any reasonable, foreseeable witness or the substance of their testimony. Or the substance of their testimony. In other words, if somebody gets up there and they can say whatever the hell they want about Donald Trump, and he is just supposed to sit there and take it, how is that fair? So I understand, look, I'm just going to be honest with you. I kind of understand. I don't agree with it, but I understand where they say, okay, no personal attacks on Jack Smith, no personal attacks on prosecuting attorneys, no personal attacks on the clerks or the personnel, et cetera. I do understand that, no personal attacks. I get that. But it's not fair to say that he cannot comment on witness testimony because, as we all know, there's a lot of outlandish witness testimony that they will more than likely be bringing to the courtroom. And for Donald Trump not to be able to give his side of the story in the court of public opinion is just absolutely wrong. 8:15, time to check the roads. From the Paul Winkler Investment WTN Traffic Center. Thank you very much. At 8:15, your weather today, mostly sunny, a high of 72. Right now, 44 degrees at Super Talk 99.7 at WTN. Okay, so I've got a little time. And it's been, I don't know, what do you think? Gentlemen, it's been a bit of time since we played the audio of Joe Biden as he arrived in Tel Aviv late last night, early this morning. And I guess, Ken, if you've been watching the news, I believe that the president is supposed to speak at some point today.
Okay.
But this is how the president sounded earlier this morning, one-on-one, he, Benjamin Netanyahu, and the media. Listen how this sounds.
It seems to me that have to continue to ensure that you have what you need to defend yourselves. And we're going to make sure that occurs, as you know. And we have to also bear in mind that Hamas does not represent all the Palestinian people. And it has brought them only suffering. Years ago, I asked the Secretary of State when he and I were working in the Senate to write something for him, and
come on, Joe, you can do
it. He said, he wrote a line that I think is appropriate.
Okay.
He said, it's not we lead.
What did he say?
Not just, well, I won't go into it. I'll wait later. Taking too much time, but the point is that...
yes, Joe, you are taking too much time. Now, Ken, you know what happened there.
Riveting.
You know, now the entire world is watching this.
The world's watching.
And you know what happens? He forgot the story.
Yeah.
He was going to go into the story, and then he forgot the story, and so he immediately did what he should have done before, which is stick to the script.
Taking too much time, but the point is this, that I was deeply saddened and outraged by the
Pick it back up.
explosion at the hospital in Gaza yesterday. And based on what I've seen, it appears as though it was done by the other team, not you. But there's a lot of people out there not sure. So we got to overcome a lot of things.
You know, one thing that I would also say, President Biden, there's a lot of people who aren't sure about your use of the term "the other team," talking about, Hamas and the terrorists. They're terrorists. To talk about how, and I realize maybe we're splitting hairs and Joe Biden, listen, we're lucky that he's awake. But, he uses this vernacular, the other team, and that sort of indicates that Israel and Hamas are like on the same moral plane. And clearly they're not. I mean, call them what they are, Joe. They are terrorists. And so for the president, it sounds to me like as he's going through all of this, it basically sounds like he is teeing up a conversation with Benjamin Netanyahu to put a pause on the 400,000 ground troops that are getting ready to go into Gaza. Here's more.
And it also means encouraging life-saving capacity to help the Palestinians who are innocent, caught in the middle of this. And, well, at any rate, that's who we are. Not just me, but that's who the United States is. And it's just not the example of our power, it's the power of our example. It's almost as important. The world's looking. Israel has a value set like the United States does and other democracies.
So you see what he's doing is he's talking about Israel. He's talking about the value set. He's talking about how the world is looking. He's talking about how a whole bunch of folks, I think he said roughly 50% of the folks in Gaza do not support Hamas. In other words, what he's doing, again, is he's teeing up a situation where he will ask Benjamin Netanyahu not to go in and do what Israel needs to do.
And they're looking to see what we're going to do. So, Mr. Prime Minister, I'm very happy to be back in Israel with you. Thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to having a thorough discussion about where everybody goes from here. But thank you, and I want to say to the people of Israel, their courage, their commitment, their bravery is stunning. It's really stunning. I'm proud to be here.
So that is, and again, there's so many things within that speech. From saying that the courage of the Israelis was stunning.
Yeah.
Really, President Biden, have you been paying attention for the past couple thousand years?
Yeah, some of the fiercest fighters on this planet.
Yes, Ken. You're absolutely right, Ken Weaver. What they go through, what the Israelis go through, I believe it's just about every generation has had to fight to maintain their land. And so for, Biden to say, I'm stunned, it's almost like a backhanded compliment.
Didn't know they had it in them.
It is embarrassing. And super text line, of course, we've been playing this throughout the morning, and the super text line just on fire with people talking about how they are embarrassed that Joe Biden is our commander-in-chief. I don't know, you think Chris Hanna might have something to say about this coming up at after the news at 9?
Oh, yeah.
I think Chris probably may have a thing or two to say about this. I know Matt Murphy's going to have something to say.
Murphy Show, yes.
And that O'Brien Wilson, afternoons at 3, he's got something to say too.
The Drive.
And just so you folks know, there's so much going on in the Middle East. We've been talking about this hospital that Israel was blamed of bombing. Turns out it was, one of these terrorist organizations within Gaza. Who was it? Dakota Wood. Earlier, we're speaking to Dakota Wood, and he was talking about, I totally missed this part of the story, about a tweet that Rashida Tlaib, congresswoman, sitting congressman, sent out a tweet right after this happened blaming Israel before any facts were in.
Yeah.
And that is part of, I believe, what has caused this mass chaos across the Middle East. Now, it's abundantly clear that this was not Israel, that this was the factions inside of Gaza. And here we are now with all of these countries, all of these Arab nations that are blaming Israel and, in effect, blaming us, when in reality it was Islamic Jihad, an offshoot of Hamas.
I'd go as far as to say if Israel was going to bomb a hospital, what is stopping them now of just completely flattening all of Gaza?
Well, you know what, Ken? That's a great point.
Why just hit the hospital? Hey, let's just go ahead and bomb this hospital right now. Wait and see what the reaction is.
Yes, like let's dip our foot in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? No, I mean, if they're going to, it's a great point, Ken. If they're going to start bombing hospitals, then they might as well just obliterate the whole damn thing.
Level it.
Yeah. But Israel has always said that they're not looking to kill innocent civilians, and that is exactly who was in this hospital. 500 plus people killed, and our coverage will continue. It's 8:23 on Nashville's Morning News. Friends, when you're looking for a personal injury attorney, it can be stressful at an already stressful time, which is why I do endorse John Griffith. You know, John was honored as the Outstanding Trial Lawyer of the Year here in the state of Tennessee a few years back. That's one of many reasons why I do endorse John Griffith. He's not afraid to go to trial if it means a better outcome for you. He literally wrote the book on how to handle these types of cases and help clients get what they deserve. Now, he is hated by his insurance companies, by the insurance companies, and loved by his clients. Attorney John Griffith is a conservative Christian whose goal it is to provide exceptional customer service, and he's got a long list of clients who have become big fans of his work. So call him and tell him Dan Mandis told you to reach out. You may need a personal injury attorney now. Maybe you don't. Maybe you'll need one tomorrow, next week, next year. But if you ever end up needing a personal injury attorney, call the guy that I trust, John Griffith, 615-807-7900, griffithinjurylaw.com.
Hey folks, I'm Paul Winkler. One of the things I've been hearing a lot from people lately is the concern about the dollar crashing. And you'll see this out there on the internet all over the place, articles written about it. And the idea is that the Russian and Chinese, those countries are looking at getting together and creating their own currency that will compete against the US dollar as a reserve currency. Now, for many, many decades, there have been other currencies that have been trying to vie for that status. And there's a possibility that you're going to have some that are going to encroach on that a little bit. But is it that big of a thing to worry about? Well, number one, last year, the Chinese currency made up very little of any kind of world trade, number one. But what is it's really going on underneath the surface? A lot of it is trying to sell you newsletters and investments that you probably ought to stay away from. For example, one of the things I see is, well, you ought to buy gold because the dollar's going to crash. And you see all of these commercials out there, and I say, well, wait a minute, wait. They're trying to get you to buy gold with your what? They're looking to take your dollars. If they really believe what they're saying, why would they take your dollars for their gold? Number one. Number two, how do you protect yourself against these valuation changes in various currencies? Well, let me explain it this way. Let's say that you had a currency called the clam. Okay, and you had a country that had one clam and you could exchange it for $1 at any one point in time. Let's say that that's the case. And you had a widget that was sold by this country, and you could buy that widget in that country for one clam. So you take your $1, you exchange it for a clam, and then you got your widget. Now, what if the dollar weakens? Well, what happens now, this clam is the same, right? Nothing different here. It's the same deal. But instead of $1, now it takes $2 to get the clam. Now, what happened? Your widget just doubled in price from your perspective as an American. Well, how do we use this to our advantage? As an investor, we want to make sure that we don't just myopically only focus on U.S. stocks. And that's a big mistake investors made from 2000 through 2010 and other periods in history, in the 1970s, the late 1980s, and so on and so forth. What we want to do is we want to make sure that we have good international diversification, because if the dollar weakens, then those international investments go up in value. So it's very, very important to know how globally diversified you really are as an investor. You want to learn more? Call us up for a free 15-minute consultation at paulwinkler.com, and we'll walk you through what we do and see if we can be of help to you, the investor out there that is so often being sold things that they really don't need to be buying.
For many of us, generators are becoming a must-have household appliance. From unpredictable weather to surprise outages, it's better to be safe than sorry. Generator Supercenter of Nashville offers fast and easy installations with 24/7 service and monitoring to all brands of generators and expert repairs done right. Our mission is to make owning a backup generator simple and easy. Visit your local store today or check us out online. Generator Supercenter of Nashville. We serve all Middle Tennessee.
President Biden in the war zone, and here in our nation's capital, the speaker's race. More voting today, maybe even tomorrow, maybe even... I'll tell you about it at 8:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Oh, Chris Hand, he's got a spicy topic for the Gang of Four Amigos.
Boy, and he is fired up about it, man. He brought some visuals. We'll show it to the WTN TV folks there, because it's I'm looking forward to this. So stay close. 8:30 on WTN. Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling. Let me tell you something. This is a company that I trust with my HVAC. Listen, heading into wintertime, it's going to get really cold. If your heater breaks down in the middle of winter, you get front-of-the-line service when you are a Beehive member from Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling. So this is the company that I trust. I've been a Beehive member for, it's been almost 10 years, as a matter of fact. And so, yeah, this is a company that I trust, and I've been a client of theirs for years. So call them today and become a Beehive member and protect your family heading into wintertime. 615-775-7833. For satisfaction guaranteed, call Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling. Tell them Dan told you to reach out. 615-775-7833. BusyBeeHVAC.com. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Full forecast and traffic in 5 minutes. Israel-Hamas war, continuing coverage. President Biden's in Israel. Says U.S. support for Israel's unwavering.
We'll continue to work with you and partners across the region to prevent more tragedy to innocent civilians.
Now, the White House says Biden's asking tough questions of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, making clear that Israelis must respect the law of war, provide humanitarian aid to innocent civilians in Gaza, and do everything possible to make sure this conflict does not widen. Right now in our nation's capital, Tennessee 5th District Congressman Andy Ogles telling WTN's Nashville's Morning News it's a matter of when, not if, Jim Jordan's elected Speaker of House.
It's going to go, I would say it'll be like January. It'll go 15, 16 rounds.
But that may be an uphill climb as 20 Republicans voted against him in the first round yesterday, and even Ogle says more will vote against him today. Market Numbers Report, brought to you by Beacon Capital Management, online at beaconcm.com. Here's Jim Ryan.
A lackluster day on the trading floor left the Dow Jones 13 points higher and a fraction below 34,000 on Tuesday. The Nasdaq Composite surrendered 0.25%. The S&P was essentially unchanged. United Airlines missed expectations for adjusted earnings in the current quarter, coming in between $1.50 and $1.80 a share. The carrier says the fourth quarter doesn't hold much promise, with the rise in fuel prices and the suspension of service to Tel Aviv. Despite higher prices and higher interest rates, Americans stepped up their spending in September. Retail sales were up 0.7%, according to the Commerce Department. That's more than twice expectations. The increase was driven by spending online and at restaurants. T-Mobile is sending notices to some subscribers on older plans, letting them know that they're being moved automatically to more expensive packages unless they opt out. The switch would add up to about $5 a month.
All right, let's check stocks. This early trading right now, we're about 3 minutes into the trading day, and right now the Dow is down 79. S&P down 20, NASDAQ down 84. That's the latest news. Traffic and weather next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Ken. I'm going to go, Johnny. It's all me. The Kellum Stem Cell Institute. So many of us deal with sports injuries like concussions, Lou Gehrig's disease, and so forth. There is now good news, whether it is you or a loved one suffering. There's now a cutting-edge treatment available for you from the Kellum Stem Cell Institute. Now, Dr. Ethan Kellum specializes in the harvesting of and then redeploying of your own stem cells to attack inflammation in your body to help it heal. This is your body providing your cells and your solutions. And Dr. Ethan Kellum can help you today. So call him today if you need his help, 615-850-4415. They can help you with all sorts of ailments. From asthma to arthritis, they can help you today. And yes, they do now accept care credit. 615-850-4415. KELLUM, the Kellum Stem Cell Institute.com. Your body, your cells, your solutions. 8:37, Nashville's morning news on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Time for the gang of four amigos. Ken Weaver's here. Good morning, Ken.
Good morning, boys. Yes.
Johnny B's here. Hey, Johnny, how are you?
Hey, good morning, guys.
I'm here. I'm Dan. Chris is over there. Hey, Chris.
Hello. Good morning.
Hey, did you hear my big interview with Andy Ogles?
I did.
Did you?
Yeah.
Not nearly as many fireworks as when you talked to him.
Huh.
That's okay.
Yeah. I was sitting there the whole time, and I was thinking, I was really thinking deep thoughts. And I remember yesterday you said you kept saying that you felt you had a weird voice. So the whole time I'm sitting there trying to think, like, does Dan have a weird voice? And I was like, I don't think Dan has a weird voice. That was my big takeaway.
So, Chris,
you don't have a weird voice.
Chris has to learn off-air and on-air conversations. That was an off-air conversation.
All right, sorry.
Hey, let me ask you guys a question. That actually brings up an interesting point. So when we all, obviously, it's been a long night. We all work in radio. So the first time you guys heard your voice on a recording, did you think that it sounded weird? And when did you get over that?
Well, the first time I heard my voice on a recording, I was like in third grade, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I thought it sounded weird.
Mm-hmm.
But then I quickly ran to my room and started playing with my toys.
Okay. Didn't know where that was going to go.
Well, he's in third grade, so, you're going to play with toys. What about you, Johnny?
Same difference. I did a spot with my father, and I thought, boy, that sounds strange. And like Ken, went home and played with my toy. But keep in mind, I was 12.
Yeah, I had a big Jim van and a big Jim doll, and
okay.
Yeah, and what went from there?
Well, I had a dinosaur, and he killed Big Jim several times.
So, Chris, now I'm assuming that you had this big, deep voice when you were like in third grade. Your voice changed when you were like in third grade, right?
Yeah, I don't like it, though. I don't know. I don't like listening to myself. The first time I heard myself, I was like, eh. I went home and played with my toys. I couldn't help it. I felt peer pressure from the guys. I just wanted to be one of them.
Yes.
All right, very good.
I want to play with toys.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to time check all y'all.
I don't want to play with this microphone anymore.
So, I still Chris brought it up. People know this, though. I've talked about this before. I still feel like my voice sounds weird. And I've been listening to my voice forever in my headphones. It sounds different in my headphones than when I hear a tape recording of my voice. It just feels weird. But there have been studies that have been shown that your voice does sound weird to you. Your voice sounds different to you than it does to other people. So I think that's part of that thing there.
Okay.
That I thought was going to go a lot better in my head than it actually did. So, I'm going to go home and play with my toys.
That was some riveting.
Make me feel better.
Hey, speaking of toys, I got the Amazon holiday gift guide at my house yesterday.
Awesome!
Oh man, were we excited? Anybody get the Amazon holiday gift guide at their house?
I haven't seen it yet.
I haven't seen one
Okay,
yet.
well, you know what I do when I open these gift guides?
And it says gifted. I
It
like
says
that.
it says gifted. It's got all the cool things. It's got all the kid toys on the front. Well, I always preview everything.
Okay.
So I'm going through with me and my wife, and we have to start tearing out pages. And I'll present to you Exhibit A if you're watching on Super Talk TV. It's a young man dressed in all pink with high pink socks on.
Oh yeah.
Wearing either jorts or a jean skirt.
That's a dude?
That's a dude.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can tell.
That's a guy.
So this and his he's I think he's some kind of influencer because he's referred to as Diego in a lot of these pages. So I noticed Diego. It stands out as weird.
Wearing a sweatshirt, hot pink with the word pink on it, pink high socks up to the knees,
and like high heel shoes, like
high heeled kind of shoes, and I don't know, jean shorts.
He's got like the DeSantis platform shoes. Give him a couple inches. So anyway, I thought that was weird.
Yeah.
And I keep going through, and then, Diego just keeps popping up. And the second exhibit I'll present to you, boys, is Diego wearing an actual skirt this time and a belly shirt.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
Now, Diego's a 14-year-old boy, it looks like.
Yeah.
Goodness.
And
but
I
doesn't
just
know
wanna,
what a 14-year-old boy is supposed to dress like.
No, and I just want to point this out to parents out there as you get the holiday gift guide in your mailbox. Diego, and then the girl that Diego's with is pictured wearing a bra on the outside of her shirt on a couple of the pictures.
Right.
Why
this
is she
girl,
doing that?
Well, that's in.
It's
That's the
trendy.
new thing. Yeah.
Is it what?
It's the trends.
Why?
That's cool to do.
And why is
now.
my voice going up 9 octaves? Because I clearly don't. Why would you wear a bra outside of your?
Well, Madonna did.
I'm
it.
gonna
Made
have to-
millions.
And then my last exhibit is also Diego. This time he's in the girls' room putting on makeup with the other ladies.
Ah.
And this is the Amazon holiday gift guide. So, I don't know, man. It's just a little bit
Can I
weird.
ask who? So,
Well, they've come a long way since my day of playing with toys.
They sure have.
if I'm looking for, but I want you to think about this though. If I'm looking for a gift, I need something that I can relate to for my kids. How many parents out there have a 14-year-old son wearing skirts and putting on makeup, and not that there's anything wrong with hot pink, but I mean hot pink.
We know Diego's parents are allowing this.
I guess I don't know. If I'm a parent, I don't relate to that, and I'm not going to.
Yeah, I do not understand the thinking of putting that in your holiday gift magazine.
You guys aren't going to get your boys some belly shirts this holiday season?
We just went school shopping with Riker
with Juicy on the butt. Yes.
didn't buy Riker a Juicy on the butt pair of pants. No, we did not. You know what I ought to do though? I ought to buy. Oh my gosh, his birthday's coming up. Should we do a gag gift? And I wonder how he would react at 10 years old if I pulled out a pair of Juicy shorts and they're hot pink for Riker. I wonder what he would do. Oh, that would be so funny.
Even better, invite all of his friends over for a party, and then you be the one wearing the Juicy shorts.
Yes, with the belly shirt.
No,
with the belly shirt.
that's an alone time on the weekend thing that we do, but we'll move on from there. What? Listen, you guys are off playing with your toys. I got better things to do.
Play with a live toy, baby. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Mandis.
All right, there we go. Why is it that these things get so awkward? I don't know.
1326 texted in and said, I miss the Sears catalog.
Yeah, me too, man.
Oh, hell, I missed the National Geographic.
Oh, yeah.
From way back when.
Sure.
Did I just date myself?
Yeah, you did.
We went from like, all right, we're men of a certain age. What time is it? We can do this. It's 8:45. We went from National Geographic under our beds to Playboy under our beds to, now we have cell phones. But anyway.
My dad let me bypass National Geographic and go straight to Playboy.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
For the articles.
Well, he just, yeah.
Okay, does everybody know what I'm talking about with National Geographic?
I know what you're talking about, but
okay.
Picking up what you're putting down, Dan.
Yeah, I really wasn't into the National Geographic. Me and my friends had a big trash bag out in the woods.
We did too until I got the subscription. Then
a trash bag in the woods?
Yeah.
Yeah, we used to have
What is wrong with you?
Oh, yeah, everybody had a wood stash.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
A wood stash?
Everybody had a wood stash.
Yeah, big old bunch of a whole bunch of reading material.
Yes.
All right, so where did you guys, get your reading material? Because I had an older brother.
Friends' dads.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, did you live in fear that your my mom found my stash under my bed? And by the time I was a senior in high school,
Danny.
I mean, by the time I was a senior in high school, I had like old National Geographics and Playboys, and it was like I just had this whole.
Danny, do you want to go to the jungle?
I had fun going on in that jungle.
Geographics and Playboys.
Yeah, that's right. My son.
Yes.
He's got strange taste.
Chris, what's coming up after the news at 9? What's coming up after the news at 9?
After the news. Let's get out of here, boys.
Let's go,
Quick,
Chris.
quick.
Take us, man.
After the news at 9, we're going to talk about Sarah Huckabee Sanders making massive moves in Arkansas as it relates to China and land that they own. We're going to go through Speaker of the House updates. It's not your father's Republican Party, as Joe Biden says, plus a border update, and it's a day of rage. So we'll cover all that too.
All right. Now you have not heard the Joe Biden audio of him in Israel.
No, I haven't heard it yet. I will have it on the show, but I probably not right away.
Should we play it for Chris just live on the air? Because I got like a minute and a half.
Sure.
Hit it.
You want to play it live for Chris?
Let's do it. I wasn't up all night like you did. That happened while I was in bed.
So I'm just leaving all that alone. So. One of the super texters said, text me when Dan's off the air.
Oh,
whatever.
Jeez.
Wow.
Yeah, whatever.
Is it my weird voice? Anyway, so this is Joe Biden. He just lands in Israel.
It seems to me that have to continue to ensure that you have what you need to defend yourselves. And we're going to make sure that occurs, as you know. And we have to also bear in mind that Hamas does not represent all the Palestinian people. Mm-hmm. And it has brought them only suffering.
Here it comes.
You know, years ago I asked the Secretary of State when he and I were working in the Senate to write something for me, and he said, he wrote a line that I think is appropriate. He said, it's not, we lead, not just... well, I won't go into it. I'll wait later.
He forgot the line.
Too much time.
Oh, my
point
God.
Is this, that,
and he goes on.
I was deeply saddened and outraged by the
he gets back on script.
Explosion at the hospital in Gaza yesterday.
He practiced that
And
passage for
I've
like the
seen, it
entire
appears
trip
as though
from Washington,
it was
D.C.
done by the other team, not you.
The other team.
But there's a lot of people out there not sure. So we got to overcome a lot of things.
And now he just... this is the part of the speech, the part of the little monologue that he does, where he just, it's like a train is just slowly stopping on the tracks.
And it also means encouraging life-saving capacity to help the Palestinians who are innocent, caught in the middle of this. And, well, at any rate, that's who we are.
Yeah.
Not just me, but I mean, that's who the United States is. And
he sounds so awful.
I mean, I'm waiting for one of these betting sites to have like a 4-gaff parlay on Joe Biden, like brings up Corvette during disaster,
set like the United States does, and other democracies, and they're looking to see what we're going to do.
Yeah, and he gets breathy. Like when Joe's having a hard time, he gets breathy. So.
Well, and I think he remembered that Corn Pop was never the Secretary of State.
There was a discussion about
Secretary of State Corn Pop. Oh, I could just see it now. That would be Biden. Anyway, so I'll leave that for you.
Thank you.
Have fun with that.
I'm excited. I will have fun with that. Also, Corn Pop is a good dude.
We've heard that about Corn Pop.
Corn Pop was a stand-up guy.
He was looking out for those kids. Nobody else was.
Old Corn Pop.
He was a hero in the hood.
All right, got to go. 8:51. 8:51. Somebody text that guy and tell him I'm almost off the air. Loan Pronto. What if you could be credit card debt-free in 10 days and save as much as $1,000 a month? Well, you can with my friends at Loan Pronto and their all-new Express Equity Credit Line. Now, you don't have to do a full home refi with Loan Pronto. You can tap a small portion of the equity you have and enjoy a super low monthly payment. And it's fast. You can do this in just a matter of days. And by the way, a $50,000 loan is only going to cost you around $400 a month. So stop the madness and say no to 24% interest fees from credit card companies and call Loan Pronto today. 615-499-5780. Ask about their amazing VA loan program as well. That's their VA loan program as well. 615-499-5780. Equal housing lender, NMLS number 166-1781, subject to lender approval.